Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully this fucker is live. Let me jump over here and make sure that I have my comments where I can view them. Bear with me. Just a moment, ladies and gentlemen. Apologies, as always, for the initial setup period. Hopefully that will give some time for people to join the chat, which I will begin monitoring in a mere moment. There we are. Now, let me just mute this fucker. And in theory, we will be good to go. This live stream will be a little bit different from other ones because I'm going to attempt to make use of the resource provided by my viewers and see if I can get them to help me think a few topics through. All right, and I have a beer. Happy Saturday night. Now, why is this not visible? Why do I not currently see movement in my chat window? As usual, apologies, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I'm not seeing myself in the live stream, and I am not seeing my comments. So apparently something screwed up. I will check it. No, don't want that. I want control room. Can I not set my audio and video? There we go. Open in another application. Ladies and gentlemen, it's being straightened out now. There are no depths to which my foolishness will not plunge. All right. All right, now it should be working. Am I visible to everyone as I should be? Okay. All right, so now I should be audible and visible to everyone. Slap me in the chat with a remark just to let me know we're good to go. And again, my apologies for this, I don't know, technical ignorance. Okay, cool. Right on. So again, apologies for that. Thank you all for joining me. I know it's a fast-moving Saturday night for many people, but I am chilling because it is raining outside and I am relaxing. And in the process of doing so, I'm thinking. And I'm thinking about a number of different things. You know, I'm always saying, well, I'm still thinking it through in various discussions. And in fact, I do that sort of thing. 3 things I am working on that I want to bring up tonight in this channel to kind of direct it. And to hopefully get some feedback from you on all of it and avoid the thing where we just noodle around in 20 different directions with separate questions in the chat section. I want to talk about 3 topics that I think deserve more attention. One is networks and the way in which we're being cut out of networks. So, you know, that ties into everything that's going on with YouTube, with Patreon, with PayPal, with Facebook, Twitter, you know, the list goes on and on, of course. Another subject is the idea of a manifesto, creating a manifesto. I know that's an inauspicious term, manifesto, given its associations, but the idea is that the right should probably do some work to figure out what is the biggest loop they can throw to create an inclusive grouping of people that can agree on a set of at least a few specific things. You know, it won't go far enough for some people, you know, it'll be too far for others, but the idea is to find some basic set of things that the right can agree upon that really kind of drives them. How can you get them all under one tent without sacrificing excuse me, without sacrificing the heterogeneity that makes the right wing currently the new punk rock. And then the third one is I want some help chasing an insight I have about the idea that the proper level of analysis for the assault that's been undertaken against the West is a religious one, and that what we're facing here is a new religion, and that simply because it masquerades under the sheepskin of secularism, you know, a lot of people are unable to go ahead and just baldly say it. It's a new religion, and these are religious zealots who are attempting to spread their new faith, flat, mired in dialectical materialism as it may be. Okay, so now I can look over here at the chat window. Before we get started, let me just see who's here. We got Green Knight, Disciple of Bugs, got all kinds of folks in here. Kill the Saints, Joanna Knoll with the braids, Waterpenny, what up? So we got some folks here, Oni, John Ski, and several others. Welcome all. I appreciate you being here. So I guess the way to work this is to throw these topics out here and see what you guys have in terms of thoughts and suggestions. Oh shit, we got New Zealand in the house as well, from the giant fiery flaming ball of angel blood, I think is how that translates. Elvicaro 555, King Ali. All right, let's see here. Okay, I got a note here to check out Jonathan Haidt, and I will. And in terms of religious insights, somebody in the comments section in one of my past live streams jumped in and very kindly directed me to Eric Vogelin, and I would show you the book, but I forgot to bring them all and put them in front of me for this damn live stream. I'm reading quite a bit at the moment. Okay, so maybe we can start with networks. We're being kicked off of all kinds of networks. And in the past, I have mentioned a thing called Fact Sheet 5. When I was a young lad, this would have been when I was 19 and 20, right in there. The big thing was zines, short for magazine, for those of you who don't know, obvious as it is, or should be. Fact Sheet 5 was basically just a copy machine produced journal, book, magazine thing. I can't remember if it was stapled or perfect bound. It probably went through some various phases in the course of its evolution, but basically you signed up for Fact Sheet 5. And when you did so, you would receive in the mail a copy produced, you know, stuck in an envelope thing that comes to you that's basically like a little booklet. And what it is organized by subject. It's P.O. boxes and contact information for various people who are just sort of grassroots underground producing their own journals. So you would get the thing, and much like in the old days when you get a catalog in the mail, some of you, you know, millennials and younger probably have never seen such things. You'd look in the Fact Sheet 5 and you'd look under, you know, your particular interest, and it would have lists of all kinds of things. So I was doing it when I was into occultism as a lad. So I got to network with all kinds of crazy people across the country who were producing zines of their own. I bring this up because I think that there's an enormous opportunity with low tech. And I think that there's a big opportunity in terms of the post office being a place that's run by the government. And in using, you would, in theory, at least have recourse to more constitutional protections, things like privacy and freedom of speech than you might otherwise have with the online tech monopolies. So I'm trying to get ideas started. Let me look over here and see if anybody is rolling with me here. Okay. California Yellow Vest Movement. I'm going to try to keep this focused, brother. If it totally crashes and burns and it looks like there isn't really any participation in discussing these ideas, I might jump over into taking questions, but I'm not ready to surrender just yet. Greetings to people in Ireland. Tim is fine. He was not able to join me this last week for a recording, and I'll be waiting and hopefully be able to record with him in the next few days. I see Menton Matthews is in the house. He knows all about Fact Sheet 5. He was around back in the days of the production of my magazine, Donateros, or a magazine I did with a number of others. Okay, Pony Express or Carrier Pigeon? No, we don't have to sink as low as, you know, 2 tin cans with a piece of string in between. All right. Jem Bannister says, my advice is to subvert academia, arts, and law, like the left did. Well, yes, but that takes rather a bit of time. And in order to do that, you have to have communication networks. And we're being pushed out of them. And I think, I sense, I intuitively feel that there must be some sort of opportunity to exploit a low-tech means of communication, of networking that everybody dismisses because it doesn't have a glowing Scrabble Babble Candy Clown 256 million color interface. So what do we have here? We could just join the left. And not just no, but fuck no. Fed protected material, Waterpenny asks. I think the thing I'm talking about is mailing shit through the mail and using it to network, perhaps using something like a Fact Sheet 5 model. So imagine if there was some kind of magazine that was like the Right Wing Clearinghouse, right? And this, you know, I don't know, the Whole Earth Catalog for the right. I don't know exactly how to explain it. Fact Sheet 5 for the right. And it's broken down with different categories. So, you know, if you're one of these people who has a real hard on for chasing a particular tribe across the earth and assigning blame for everything that's ever happened to them, there's going to be a section for you. Freedom of speech, baby. If you're someone who is more libertarian, there'll be a section full of all kinds of stuff, you know, for that, as the joke goes, talking about weed and Bitcoin. If you're into firearms and Second Amendment stuff. But essentially all it would have to be is something that's produced in some sort of grassroots fashion with contact information. So here are some questions. Let me try to get this rolling better for you. Imagine that you get something in the mail like we're talking about, and you see that different stuff is listed and some of it interests you. What are the potential issues that this could face? What are the speed bumps? What would people get hung up on with it? Like, I think about, number one, the desire for everything to happen yesterday. You know, the instant gratification aspect is going to be rough because people are used to it's not even like email anymore. It's like instantly it comes in your pocket with your telephone and you can respond immediately. But maybe there's something baked in there where the fact that you have to wait more for it gives it more value. I think there's a whole generation that doesn't know what it's like to wait for a letter and then finally get it and open it. You know, the idea that some things take a little bit longer, but maybe there's more to them. Maybe they're more significant. Maybe they're more meaningful. And at any rate, you can suggest that if it all moves more slowly, maybe the phrase, "the slow blade penetrates the shield," applies. Okay, so one is the delay. That's something I think about that people might gag on. Another issue is the fact that to have a PO box, you've got to go and pick up your shit at the PO box. So some people are probably so paranoid that they don't want to have some known place that they go to collect their mail and will be seen. I think it's safe to say, though, for those folks, there's not much that's going to draw them out anyway. And ultimately being that worried about being associated with holding their views probably means that there are some issues with them, right? Like if you don't stand up and, you know, kind of say what you believe, I don't know how useful you are in terms of networking anyway. Not to say you're not useful to yourself as an individual pursuing your own path. However, in terms of this kind of thing, to network and cooperate, it would seem that people who are a little bolder are necessary. So people might gag on the idea of having to go get a PO box. Not just the people who are communicating, to say nothing of using their home addresses, but also the ones who want to be, you know, start producing their own zines. Because what does this Fact Sheet 5 get us other than a list of interesting things, unless each of those people that we may write through the postal system is willing to produce their content in some fashion other than placing it online, or at least as an auxiliary, at least in addition to it. So there's two things I can think about that would be problems. There's probably more. But while we're on this subject, man, fax machines. I haven't even gone to the Goodwill in so long because I've got, you know, enough Goodwill shit that needs to go the other direction down the road. But I mean, I can imagine that fax machines probably cost nothing. And can you imagine fax machines working with landlines? Fax machines working with landlines, how are they going to cut you off? And then you don't have to wait for mailing, and that speeds things up. So you can basically have Wow, and the fax machine stuff can basically be scanned straight in. So somebody who is smart and set it up with some kind of Terry Gilliam Brazil type arrangement would be able to shoot something through a fax machine, and it basically gets received by something that is either a fax or a virtual fax on the other end, and it could go live. There's all kinds of hybrid crossover stuff. You know, I'm not talking about fish nor fowl nor good red herring. You know, it's not a land dweller or a sea dweller. Maybe it would be more like an amphibian. Now I'm probably ranging too far afield, but you guys get the point. This is what I want to hear about. What do you have for ideas? Let me look here. We still got lemon juice. Exterminating the passenger pigeon was a bit hasty, yes. Ace Pilto mentions synonymous image boards. I'm not sure exactly what that means. All right. Wish I was young again. You're so cute. Fuck off. I wish I was young again too. All right. They'll go through your mail too. They give zero fucks about federal law. Yes, people will go through your mail, but that's based on the assumption that you're doing illegal, communicating within the law, within your First Amendment rights to network and organize for lawful and civil for lawful and civil purposes to affect, political outcomes. There's nothing illegal about that. Let them go through the mail. My point is the mail will go through. And if somebody gets all, gets a little stiff little pecker about it, they're going to face all kinds of shit because it's a federal service, or it's on borderline. I'm not entirely clear on how it's run now, because it's a government service, and yet in some respects it's not. I got to look into that. A libertarian branded fax machine, yes. BBS. Now see, BBSs together with fax machines and the rest, that could be interesting. But does it require a type of person who's more serious about forming the network? Because to deal with a BBS and, a 2400 baud modem firing up, and listening to that background sound as the connection is made, that all seems to me as though it requires a lot more commitment. Maybe we're dealing with people who are too spoiled in terms of immediate gratification for any of this to work. But I think not. I think it could be made cool. In the same way that things that are traditional rather than progressive are becoming increasingly cool. Does it not seem that there could be a corresponding aspect where that which is fast becoming slow, that which is slow becomes cool? Okay, most printers have a fax option. Very interesting. Okay, Waterpenny says, didn't the porn industry resort to this with mixed effect? You mean like the old thing of like order your girly mags and they'd come in a brown envelope? I think Joanna Noel was joking about that up above. Yeah, I'm familiar with that, but what's the mixed effect? Okay. Jeffrey Grimm says what we're doing now is legal and we're being attacked and censored nevertheless. Yes, that's always a problem, but you got a whole lot more legal recourse with a class action lawsuit against the post office, I would imagine, than you would against YouTube. All right. Markovian seals. Yes. Okay, BBS just needs a host machine. Yeah, that's from Postert 74. I think about distributed networks where you can't take down a central node. So maybe there's some, blockchain crossover thing that could happen there. All right. Handwritten letters are good, but yes, that's the slowest of the slow. Expecting that's just for communication with dear friends and, those who are closest to you. Unless you write fast. Okay, let's see. Somebody's saying they want to see me interview John Mark. Yeah, I've been looking at some of his stuff on his channel. I haven't seen him do any interviews other than with Millennial. I'll give that some thought, but I want to stay focused here on these ideas. All right. TOR is an option for more modern Tor. Okay, duh. Yes. See, these are areas that are already being thought through. I'm only interested in those areas. I mean, obviously, I'm happy to hear about things that my Luddite ass wouldn't have heard about, but I don't think there are a bunch of people thinking about how to use fax machines, landlines, and Fact Sheet 5. It's unplowed ground at present, I think. Whereas Tor and all the crap going on with blockchain and the rest, that's really smart people are already thinking that through. I think we can just go back through this and say, is there something that ain't broke so we don't need to fix it? Jeffrey Grimm asks, so am I seeing something that's making me think this may be necessary soon? Well, I think there's definitely going to be an increase in the clampdown approaching the 2020 election. And I think there's 2019, there are elections in the European Union this year, right? Excuse me, which means that I think the pressure is going to increase. And I want to think this through. You have to think through options, always, coming at it from one way or another. How did the Persians take out, Leonidas and his 300 Spartans and others in the pass? They threw the entire army at the front of it, which is the way everybody was going, and it didn't drop them. What dropped them was taking a winding little narrow path around the back way and taking them out. So, this is me thinking about winding narrow paths around the back way. Of course, when I say taking them out, I mean in a lawful and civil fashion through political mechanisms. I just want to see how we might be able to network. Let's see here. Easiest and safest way would be to form your own church. Oh man, 501c3s. Yeah. Considerable scrutiny there. All right, let's see. What's next? Just communicate through the collective unconscious by talking to strangers. Yes, that's the ghost-to-ghost network. One by one, you reach out to people individually. Now, this is interesting from Ace Pilto. Head over to sites that are just basically non-existent these days or way out of the limelight, like MySpace. That's really interesting. Have other people been thinking about that? It's kind of like the virtual equivalent of finding some, red state, landlocked country town that has just a few people living in it and moving in and making it yours. That's interesting, very interesting. I'd want to know if anybody has thought more about that, has talked more seriously about it. Good walkie-talkies. Yeah, that's local though. And there's all kinds of things with whatever the federal agency responsible for shit that goes out in the airwaves is an FCC. There's not that it couldn't be done, but that's also a serious equipment investment. It works short in your region, then you seem more like a militia. It's less like a informal political system for sharing and notification. Encryption with email. Yeah, there are problems with Google for sure. I will probably go with, Proton Mail. Just have to get off my ass. All right. What am I missing? I'm sorry, guys. This is taking me a while. Zines are a way to go. This from BDB. BDBD. I'd have to agree that zines are the way to go for a stable network that can grow, but maybe I'm just old. Yeah. Maybe I'm just old too. But I think it could work, man. There's something about actual letters. There's something about writing you read when it's reflected, not backlit. There's something about it. And it just fits, right? People who are more traditional, why would they not feel an impetus of their own to go and try it the old-fashioned way? It's like when I was young, I was born in the 70s, so wearing something from the 60s was cool. Younger people now are like, wear something from the 80s, and it's cool because it's just outside their reach, and they want to establish across generations that link with what came before. There might be something in that zine deal. It would just require enough people getting on board. Could a Millennial Woes, would a Varg, would a Red Elephants, would all these people come together and say, yeah, I'd be willing to experiment with the behind the scenes, this being a second kind of medium for my ideas to propagate within. All right. What else here? All right. Matthew's notes, printing has become more expensive than it used to be. Printing anything is rarely done as much as it was done in the past. Books and magazines cost way more than they used to. Yes, but what about copy machines? I remember ditto machines. Who remembers ditto machines from school? Purple ink. Yeah, but what about copy machines? And what about fax machines? I mean, it might be that you're just not mass producing fax paper. I mean, I remember the old fashioned thermal, fax paper that was all glossy. That was horrific, but it's pretty much the same thing as a laser printer now. And if you're talking about mailing it out, I think postal fees are the biggest expense that you would deal with, you know. But yes, there are increased printing costs. How's BitChute doing? They still have technical hurdles. They continue to grow and get bigger, but it's very much incremental as far as I can tell. But the guy who runs it is really nice and is very responsive if you reach out to him directly. So you can always, find him on Twitter and ask. And when I say the guy behind it, I think he's one of several, but he's one guy I've talked to. He seemed to be pretty straight up. Okay, Jim Bannister said he thinks the best bet is economical collapse and out-survive the left-end city folk. Yeah, but you're going to need your damn kerosene refrigerators and your wells and your hand-rolling cigarette machines and your solar panels. Most people aren't set up for that, and I like to think that events of that sort will be relatively short-lived. Okay, damn it. There are too many of you, fuckers. Even 73 is making me play hell to catch up. By the way, press the like button, fuckers. Okay. I'm trying to find myself in here. Very local prepper equipment. Yeah, but the preppers got that under control, and most folks are not going to be willing to network in that way with total strangers. It just doesn't make sense. You don't want to tell people where your shit is, or open your networks with people you trust to people that simply have not been tested. So that's why I'm focused out here on the large scale, more towards mass communication to make sure that ideas get shared, events can be coordinated, all the lawful civil aspects of what we might need to do. All right. Talks Network, another one I haven't heard about. But again, I'm thinking steampunk, man. Copy machines and the mail and fax machines. That's interesting because they're this old-fashioned way. And you can fax to multiple numbers. You could have a network of fax numbers. I remember I had to run a fax machine at a Kinko's back around like 1990, 91. And it was one of the fancy ones where you could go in and you do mass mailing of faxes. All that shit has to be handled digitally now. There must be, there's probably a damn web portal window that you can go in even through, a browser running an app and do multiple faxes to multiple machines. How does that work? You have the convergence where there's not really phone lines and data lines. They're one thing. How does that work? Could you have networks of telephone numbers that didn't even have to be real telephone numbers, and they just go through data and use some old-fashioned fax shit to share images? I don't know. Maybe I'm being too clever by half. Okay. Joe Tosis asks, what purpose would the network serve specifically? An alternative way to communicate that might be a little bit slower, but that moves around choke points like with YouTube or Facebook. I've thought about things like email mailing lists, but again, that's a possibility. I'm trying to see things that other people might not have seen yet. And the whole live stream will not be about this. I just want to get the basic idea out there, and other people who have a big brain about it, if you don't want to communicate in the comments section, or, part of the problem is I'm going through these so damn slowly. You can follow up with me, direct message on Twitter, or get me through Gab or the Discord server or whatever. All right. Librem 5 cell phone. Okay. I'm talking about LP sleeve art. People definitely are old like me. All right. You can mass text, you can mass fax. There's a thing called an e-fax. Yes, it just needs some thinking through, like a combination of a fact sheet 5 equivalent, a fax machine network. Like, there's stuff that can be done. The big issue there, I think, with the mail part is people's the desire for anonymity. You'd have to get a PO box, and even then, people could be like staking it out to see if you came to get it. But again, this is for civil legal behavior, so I think, you know, get over it if you're worried about that. See, PDF and that's that kind of shit that PDF and the rest concerns me, because that means that every instance of that moving around must have some associated little data packet that gets shot to Adobe so they can track it. And to be fair, Adobe that company hasn't been anywhere near as bad as like Google or Microsoft from what I've seen. But that's why I like fax, because it's so low tech, it's so old that there's probably some you know, first-year computer science student can probably hack together a program in a weekend that would do everything I'm talking about here. Somebody asked Semiagog, what's my gab? I think it's at Semiagog or Semiagog. If you don't, it's not down in the description right now because I just live streamed this, but in any one of my videos, you can see a link to my gab account in the description box. All right. Many scanners, fax combo machines are available with software to do the mass faxing. Yeah, just be a network of people. Joanna Knoll has forgotten the question. That might be a polite way of reminding me to tell people who might have just come in what is under discussion here, and that is the idea of networks, alternative networks with you know, new ways, new ideas, maybe using old technology. Looking back to find ways to stay in touch even when such networks are being shut down, like communicating with your Twitter followers. You know, you get booted from Twitter and it's over. Anyway, I think I got the basic ideas out there. Let me just roll through it and we'll jump to something else. So that community meetups after handwritten invitations. Yeah. Encrypted email. Yeah, and mass emailing with encrypted email. You got to give your email address away. I don't know, there's some part of it that seems like there's a cool aspect of making it old too, like wanting to participate in it because it's different. That in itself could cause a network to grow if it's branded right. All right. Subscribestar is back. Yes, Subscribestar is back, it seems. I got a message about that it will begin processing payments. Okay. So those of you who want to support the channel through that are, and thanks to those who already are, it can do that through Subscribestar. Yeah, banking is the other one. Post office money orders are very interesting. That's another reason to get a PO box. I may be doing that soon. All right. Jeffrey Grimm notes the cool versus effective trade-off. Fact sheet 5 would definitely be losing a lot in effectiveness. Okay. And another reference to Tox Network from El Vaquero 555. I will look into it. I'm not cool enough as regards technology to be willing to put my mind to the process of learning what it's all about. I need to hang out with someone. This is what happened when I was younger. I hung out with people who were really good with all of this. And so you just kind of pick up from being around the edges of it, everything you need to know, and you kind of stay ahead. But when you're divided from all of that, you know, operating solo in front of a computer screen like I am, for the most part, you know, when I'm doing this stuff, you don't get to hear about all the latest shit. Okay. So has to be something simple. Even a caveman could use it. Well, yeah. Fax could do that. Although, you know, hell, if I tried to use one of those old-fashioned, you know, multi-button fax machines, I might get lost in my own underwear. All right, so let's jump over to the second topic. You guys understand what I'm after there. Maybe someone who watches this later will have some ideas. You know, I'm looking for old ways, existing infrastructure that isn't being used. Like if there were a way to, you know, communicate messages through copper pipe, you know, I'd be interested in hearing about it. What I'm saying is, what connects us all together? How are we touching? What are latent networks that we're not conscious of that still sit there? And I think the postal system is one of them. you know, other fax machines, etc. So that's what I'm thinking about when Fact Sheet 5, the old zine phenomena. So think it through. If you get inspired based on any of these sort of starting points or the ways in which they can cross over, you know, it may be that there's something that could be done with fax in combination with post where one kind of takes up the slack left by the other one due to the native inadequacies of the medium or format or idea. Okay, so next one. Creating videos as well. Seriously, this stream is boring. Rather watch my videos than this BS. Would be so much better. Let's see here. You go into timeout. I'm not going to pull a full Owen Benjamin and just boot you forever. All right, next one. Manifesto creation. This is the idea that there are a whole bunch of people on the right who have certain areas where their ideas overlap and areas where that shit doesn't overlap at all, right? Like, so take, for example, the fact that Possert74 is on this channel and what's the Bugs Bunny name? The full name of the Bugs Bunny name? Anyway, the Bugs Bunny guy and Possert guy are both on the channel and they seriously disagree about any number of things, but they're both here. That suggests that there is all kinds of stuff going on with people out in the world where there's some general area for agreement as well as major differences. And so what does everybody think about this idea of, I don't know, concentric rings of a manifesto, you know, finding the balance to where the ring isn't too big, to where it's utterly meaningless, but the ring isn't too small, to the point where it's so exclusionary that it precludes cooperation. You know, is there a need for some kind of, hey, this is the basic shit we all agree on, and people on different channels say, yeah, we do? Or is it too cute? Is it like trying to form an after-school club? What do you people think? The feds control the post office and watch for this kind of activity. Of course they do, but we control the feds. And if we don't, there's at least a mechanism for us to return them to our control. Wow, sending up a small satellite. Now, that's an A for thinking big. Wow. What else do we have here? Come on, peoples. No, not like a constitution, like a general movement manifesto. And I hate that word manifesto. It almost needs to go away. I'm sorry, I'll try to be clear. Some sort of statement of shit that everybody agrees on that they want to see change, right? Like some people are really big into right to life, right? Some people want to throw rocks at Jews. Some people are way into the white nationalist aspect. Other people are more into the libertarian side of things. Some people are big on control over the money supply and banking and are into Bitcoin and that kind of stuff. Other people are into firearms, right? Is there some sort of general picture that can be formed that, is there one umbrella that all those people could organize under? Or is that too much? Venn diagrams are nice. Well, the Bill of Rights makes a pretty good manifesto for Americans, you would think. Yeah, but the thing is that this is an international movement, which is kind of a separate discussion that might be interesting to go into. How can it be international and yet nationalist? You know, how can you operate collectively at that scale across countries without having some sort of globalist substrate to your thinking, or if nothing else, some aspect to your thinking that underlies your basis for cooperation that could be subverted by globalists. All right. A mission statement. Yeah, that kind of thing. Policy agreement. Sure. Yeah. It's kind of like we agree on all of this. We have a lot of differences, but we all agree that this shit right here needs to change. I want boomers to forfeit their equity and property and testicles in one kidney. Yeah. Well, they don't run as fast anymore, so it shouldn't be hard to chase them down, he says, metaphorically. I like guns and I hate central banks. Yeah, there are probably a whole lot of Americans. Manifesto, for what purpose? If you call it a manifesto, to bring together the various peoples across our earth. who can loosely be described as nationalist, traditionalist, conservative, dissident right, the various people who essentially are aligned against global socialism, communism, progressivism, the reduction of all of us to NPCs, if you will. You have to touch people's ego if you want it to be universal. Yes, but there's a whole category of people who seem to want to dispense with the idea of ego and egotism. So there's even a category of people that wants to suppress too much discussion of the ego based on collectivization. And they're presumably, ostensibly on the right. A non-aggression pact between people who hold common values. Yes, that could be a way to, that's a first step. The next step would be a cooperation pact based on those common values. So the idea is a document summarizing the set of common values that's not too broadly, set up and not too narrowly. Trudeau must have had a butt plug as a pacifier. Who's to say that he's not wearing one right now to stay calm and it's not in his mouth? Okay. Doodle-doodle-doo. Now see, I just found my way and I just got lost. For fuck's sake. I can hit Bitcoin at 100 yards. Hell yeah. All right. You can't have, Amanda Anderson says you can't have one unless you give in to globalism. And I'm assuming she says a manifesto of shared purpose. I get that. I totally get that. That's what I was talking about earlier when I said there would be some substrate lying beneath any project that involved cooperation between all these nationalist groups that would either already be implicitly kind of globalist or would be set for subversion. But I don't want to dispense with it too much yet because you have to have a way to cooperate. The bottom line is if you say I'm such a nationalist that I won't cooperate with any other nation, then you fail to cooperate. How can you stand together without losing your respective national identities in some way that allows you to bring international force to bear on a foe, an enemy, or let's be more charitable and say a competitor who is already de facto operating on a global scale? I have not seen John Mark's video today. All right. We tried this from Contusion. We tried proposition nationhood and it was overwhelmed. What alternative is there to ethno-nationalism since monarchy? That's a separate discussion. I'm sorry, man. I'm not jumping into that. And I'm not suggesting a proposition nationhood, a manifesto for the rest. I'm talking about an informal document that's not produced by a government that would provide some scope for generation identitaire and I don't know. I'm just pulling this out of my ass. None of these are, my mentioning them is not an endorsement of them, but Proud Boys, Generation Identitaire, Red Ice people, Sargon people, Black Pigeon speaks kind of folks, like, and outside just the cooperative networks of YouTube and the rest, like where everybody could sit down and say, wow, there's something happening globally and we all want to, go our own way. Self-determination is central to it. But once we acknowledge that we all believe in self-determination, we do believe that there's room to cooperate. And then the question is, in what areas? What are the areas? Like, I think one is freedom of speech that everybody can agree on that they want. Going back to the person who jumped in and said the Bill of Rights is a great place to start, it is. Armed citizenry. You're going to have a huge problem with that in Europe because a lot of even the right wing they're still so trained that I don't know, maybe they're more than I know about, but I know that there would be resistance and you'd lose a lot of people in the center if, for example, the right to keep and bear arms is included. You see the whole thing? This is why I'm thinking about it and why it has these differing aspects that have to be reconciled. All right. Well, Declaration of Principles, that can work too. Start with the definition of nationalism. Yes. Global quilt making. My God. Contusion says manifesto seems like proposition nationhood to me. I'm not referring to a proposition nationhood. I'm not referring to the formation of a nation. I'm referring to a set of shared values that form a basis for cooperation that can be left at any time, that is never even formally entered into. It's just to get people clear on where they can all agree, and therefore bring their collective efforts within a framework of cooperation to bear. And I'm not talking about everybody in the world. I'm talking about primarily Western countries, and those that are either neutral or have a positive attitude towards them. I'm not talking about spreading this out to Nigeria or to even to really to a place like Bolivia. I'm thinking, this is for the West. But then again, maybe that's too limiting, right? That's an example of a small circle when nationalism has a whole bunch more power. If I say I don't want to do it in Bolivia, well, then I'd be leaving out Brazil. And Brazil just had, a major shift that's going to do nothing, I think, but help corresponding efforts in the U.S. Yellow Vest movement needs to grow. Well, yeah. Stalking Horse asks, a party platform. No, there is no party. It's just a loose framework for cooperation between people, where you can say it's kind of like Yellow Vest now, which leads me over to this idea of Yellow Vest needs to grow. Well, yeah, the problem is that we still don't know who controls the Yellow Vests. Nobody does, apparently, at this point. So it's kind of like, who owns the revolution? Well, yeah, I think the Yellow Vests need to grow if it really is the grassroots populist response that it is. But if it's a massive mechanism for left-wing subversion, then maybe I don't want it to grow. And here's where the whole subject I'm bringing up comes into play, which is, well, what is it that everybody in the Yellow Vest agreement movement agrees upon? And who knows, maybe they don't agree upon anything, in which case, are they really cooperating? To say there's a lot of work to be done is an understatement. Amen. But for the good of whom would this movement undertake all of this, asks Jem Bannister. It's a very good question. You could perhaps present it in such a fashion that it all comes down to individual good, right? And that's where I'm constitutionally inclined to center it. How do you make my life better? Well, is it through recognition of nations? Great, then I'm all for that. Other people will want to see it being for the benefit of the various nations that participate, which presumably has this knock-on effect to all the way downstream to individuals, but that's another thing that would have to be defined. I know it sounds crazy and I know it sounds like hair splitting, but as soon as you sit down to actually get real about this crap, it requires some thought, because people have to agree. And in order for them to agree, people need to cooperate, presumably, to be successful in pushing back against, the swarming global hordes. In order to do that, they have to have a vehicle for cooperation. And that comes down to clarity on what their aims are. That's why Jem Bannister's question was great. To whom go the benefits, right? They have to know what their aims are, what their purpose is, who's going to benefit, what the degree of cooperation is, where it begins and ends. But again, it's not a party. It's not a political party. That's why manifesto is probably a bad word. Let me just look here and maybe we can move on to the next topic that interests me. Yellow Vest big in Australia yesterday. It seems that they're continuing in France as well. So in other words, I don't want to recreate the UN. Yeah, fuck no. No. Can I just be left the fuck alone without entering into any agreement to just fucking live? Well, that's the theory, Amanda Anderson. I agree with that approach. I like it that way, but I am more and more convinced by the arguments of those further to the right than me, saying there comes a point where you're going to have to cooperate. They'll collectivize, become one, recognize each other's, shared purpose and direction. I don't go all the way over the edge with it, but there's going to have to be some cooperation. Otherwise, you just kind of get rolled over. It's like a tree on top of the hill by itself, rather than, a whole stand of them. All right. Canada first. Enjoy LARPing as cattle. All right. Sorry, people. It doesn't look like there's any specific movement here. So I've shared the idea. In many respects, this was a test. I want to see to what extent, the dialogue can get going. I'm used to working with people around a table in a room with a giant ass whiteboard and notepads and magnets and, sticky notes and all that kind of crap. And this is what I do for a living. You sit down, you start to bring this up, and each person takes a piece and works on it. And then you lay it out spatially in some way where you're not captured by the confines of a page or the rectangle of a screen, so that you can look at relationships in space, stand back from the picture, throw stuff up there as it appears in your mind, and take some time over days to sort it and reach realizations that can be useful. But I don't know if this format through Livestream is going to give me what I need to do that, or indeed going to give all of you what you need to make it worth your time. So where's Tim? Love the man. He was not available to record a few days back. I have not scheduled a new session with him. I assume and hope he is doing well. He is high atop a mountain in Tennessee, as is always. A whiteboard is racist. Yes, I suppose it is. All right. Well then, hello to everyone who's just joining. If you did not hear about it at the beginning of all of this, I have a few ideas I wanted to throw out and see if I could do something different with the live stream rather than simply ask, one-off questions. We'll see how it's going. I've presented a couple of ideas thus far. The first one I talked about alternative networks, since choke points are happening online. See earlier in the stream if you want to have a look at that. Fact sheet 5, fax systems, emailing lists, post office boxes. Another one is manifesto creation, a basis for cooperation. That doesn't seem to really hook anybody strongly. So we have moved on to another one, which is an insight. This is my idea, and it's certainly not in any way unique to me, that what we're dealing with here is a religion. The assaults upon the West are a religion. Now, a lot of people will jump in and they'll say, oy vey, it's one particular religion. I am talking about something different in this case. I am talking about the idea that we're faced with a religion that has thus far, for the most part, gone unrecognized as a religion. We don't fully recognize, it hasn't consciously made it up into the forebrain. We haven't articulated the pieces in the understanding that this is a religious attack. It's the spreading of a new religion. It has all the features of a religion, I think. I'd at least argue at this point. And while I've been pointed towards people like Vogelin, who I've not yet read, but I will be reading soon, the book finally came. Luckily, I was able to pick it up used. People like Vogelin come in and say, yeah, these ideologies, the totalitarian ideologies like communism and Nazism, this kind of thing, that they are fundamentally religious. They're like a secular religious thing. That's great. And I'm glad I heard about him, because I had not. It seemed reasonable. Somebody must have thought about this before me. Certainly lots of people have. But what I think you can go further and you can say, well, okay, yeah, Vogelin recognizes that, yeah, it is fundamentally religious. It subverts, or at least co-ops or runs on misdirected religious instinct that probably doesn't have an outlet in this increasingly secular age. But I think you can go further and you can say, all right, fine, yeah, they're all generally religious, but what's this religion? What's this one that we're looking at? What is its features? What are its features? All right, let me see what's been going on in the background. Define religion. Something yeah, I'm not prepared for that. God damn it. In this case, I think the features are that it's fundamentally Platonic or otherworldly. The notion that there is another state to which we aspire. So you can say at ground it's utopian. Anything that has an eschatology, anything that involves salvation, a reward state, that you have to take based on faith, I think is what I'm talking about when I say religion in this context. So, there is this state to which one aspires, nirvana or thoughtlessness of some kind, freedom from the wheel of samsara in Buddhism. And it entails a Platonism or an otherworldliness because it requires us to take some of these things on faith, at least in the lower ranks of the religion. Anything that involves going to the heavenly Jerusalem or being raised at Judgment Day, right? Something in the future that involves a kind of salvation that is always already also social, always already also moral. This is what I'm talking about. I could do some work and should, to your point, with being very specific about defining it, but that's what I'm after here. So in the case of the socialists, communists, utopian communists, there's a future state in which all these problems with human beings that, most of us who are realistic see as congenital in most cases, one day all those problems will be resolved. One day there will be a magical state where, from each according to their ability, to each in accordance with their need, where private property disappears, where there's no more oppressor and oppressed, right? This is fundamentally religious as far as I see it. So let me just check my comments here. I think we're all intrigued by Mr. Rudisil's individualist mutualism. Kropotkin is Johnny Reb. Yeah, he's described it in the past to me as mutualism. I don't want to pretend like I can totally lay it out. There's probably some stuff that I've missed with it, but I remember he was looking at a lot of different things at that time. I think at that time when he mentioned to me, he was looking at, I think it's the Stanford Prison Project and a number of other, the Banality of Evil was another book he was reading at the time. And his big focus, again, he can explain it himself, but as I recall, his big focus there was the idea that you help others because it helps you. And, there is certainly a strong streak of socialism in that, in the sense that everybody gets ahead. But I think it's his way of trying to sidestep the utopianism. You don't look for a future state where, one day there will be no property and all will be equal and no one will be oppressed. He's like, well, no, let's measure our socialist projects based on a much more immediate standard, which is how the fuck does it help me right now? So I certainly am on board with that. But the idea is that this is religious. Somebody's asking about the EZO threads. I have not done one in a while. I should. Damn it. Being unjustly condemned and condescended by the opposition is probably the primary unifying factor. From Ace Pilto. What is the doctrine of the new religion? Yes, that question from Waterpenny. What is the doctrine of the new religion? That's what I'm after. So I've been laying stuff out. This actually ties to at least two other projects that I'm looking at. One is the break glass in case of fire, martial law, civil law systems that we have in the West, and how people aren't thinking about the fact that those two systems run in parallel when they think about arguments for or against collectivization and the need to change the government in order to deal with the crisis. Nobody thinks about the fact that we already have a system wherein you have recourse to this plan B, which is a heavy hierarchical thing. Anyway, the martial law, this kind of thing. I mentioned it in my longer clip with Porridge, lovely Porridge Pals, for those who want to know more about it. This is one thing that will be affected by what I'm talking about. The other thing is who are them, and questions about particular tribes that everybody wants to answer in a given way. So everything I'm talking about here about what the nature of this religion is going to apply to those other side projects of mine. But okay, so Waterpenny asks, what is the doctrine of the new religion? I don't know, but I've laid a few of them out. Not quite doctrine yet. I've got one sort of doctrinal element, if you will, bearing in mind that all of this can be unconscious. If you sit these people down, you've got certain issues that emerge in trying to understand where it is that they're coming from, right? I have to say this at the beginning, Waterpenny, because before you can get into the doctrine, you have to kind of distinguish two types. At least it seems like that to me. You have to assume that there's basically a combination of spontaneous and contrived features. So in understanding this religion, part of my assumption is that it's a spontaneous eruption from a collective unconscious or the unconsciouses of various collectives that are simply made manifest. You know, the idea that in a certain time and a certain arc of development, some religious things spontaneously manifest, right? So there seems to be a big theme in Christianity where the idea that we're all equal, the souls are equal before the eyes of God, and we have a duty to our fellow men. So this is kind of an awareness that manifests as a driving force in a religion, and I tend to think that it's grassroots. I don't think it would have swept through Europe unless there was a receptivity to it, this idea of readiness for it. So that's the aspect where that part of the religion is spontaneous. But there's the other part, which is contrived, which is top down rather than bottom up. So when we try to figure out the doctrine of this religion on one side, you go scratch the surface, and all you do is you hear people repeating the limited bits and pieces, the simplifications of shit like Frankfurt School doctrine that they were taught in college. And so if you look at it from that perspective, you could say, well, why does the project matter, Oliver, trying to figure out what the religion is? Because one side of it here, we can see clearly is just, it's crap made up by commies and pushed down the throats of children in order to indoctrinate them. You know, and in that respect, it's not a spontaneous religion at all, Oliver. And I would say, yes, that's half of it. But the other half is that's meeting in the middle with something that's coming from the bottom up, or these people wouldn't get traction with their doctrine. And it gets even more complicated because you can say, are they creating their traction because they've already engaged in a kind of anthropological and psychological analysis of where people are going, and they know where the tension points are going to be, so they seize them and bend them to their purposes in particular ways? You know, so it's very difficult to look at the doctrine. Some of it is top down, and it seems to be imposed by, you know, commie programs of subversion or the equivalents, but other parts are coming up from the grassroots. And that's what's interesting to me. So, like, one of the things that I see is that the past qua past, the past as past, this is the only doctrinal point that I think I've really got, is that the past qua past, as past, the past in and of itself is always bad. It's always already bad. There must be something bad there. Either it's going to be the bad thing of you looking back at your own history as an oppressor and what you did for which you must feel guilt, or it's going to be you looking back and reviewing what happened to you as a victim, which is going to require of you emotionally that you feel a sense of outrage and resentment. The past is never good. And that actually fits as the sort of the other part of the carrot and stick picture of progressivism. Progressivism means that we always must be marching into the future. After all, it's the current year. And yet scrambling behind us, you know, in the darkness, or almost like a crocodile with a watch in its belly. You know, you can hear the past coming. The past is coming. We've got to escape it by, you know, marching towards the ever receding horizon of the utopian future to get away from the evil of our past. And it creates a movement, and that movement is called progress. So what I'm saying is, can we abstract these elements and lay them out just like I did there and say, this is the narrative of the religion? And then we can say, wow, man, the whole thing about progress and rejecting what came before, that's fundamentally a thing that goes with adolescence. That's a thing that is universal to the experience of adolescence. As I talked about before in my previous clip, progressivism, weaponized adolescence. Like I'm engaging in these different little areas where I think around something, but it's part of a project, and I hope to string them all back together again. Because you can put these pieces together and say, okay, wow, so this is fundamentally kind of a religion of adolescence based on the idea that the past must be escaped and you must march towards the future. That's a attitude that's that goes with adolescence in a number of ways. First off, you want to escape the state of being subject to the will of another that goes with childhood. You want to march towards things like sex, freedom of movement, autonomy, and income. You know, when you're little, you imagine you can buy all the candy you want. You know, this is a fundamental aspect that seems to be a part of this religion. So, you know, I can sink a hook into what part of the arc of human development they've settled upon is most useful to them. And it seems to be extending a period of adolescence. I can look at things like the fact that it's top down and bottom up. It's both spontaneous as well as contrived and imposed from without. What else do we have here? The past qua past is always bad. And then we've got sort of instances of the religion as this network of assumptions running into, or I shouldn't say running into, I should say made manifest in specific instances that then become narratives. And one I'm thinking about is climate change, right? The past is always bad. We did bad things in the past, so we're paying the price for it now for our greed and our destruction of the environment. The fact that we're destroying the ozone layer, you know, we humans are bad, and we have spread across poor Mother Earth. I was just looking at a movie. I had to turn it off like after 15 or 20 minutes because it was so fucking stupid. But it was called EO. And it's about some, you know, female biologist on an Earth that's dying, and it's in clouds of gas. And the whole thing opens with, you know, we smothered poor Mother Earth, and I like to think that the clouds of poisonous gas that swarmed across the surface of the planet were really just Earth trying to wipe us out before we destroyed her. You know, we're just awful. The past is bad. You can see how the past is bad is manifest in this version of the narrative. You know, we destroy the planet, we destroy everything, pollution and greed. Man is bad. We must do better, because it's the current year. We must march into the future. It's an ever receding horizon with Starbucks for everyone, and it's free, and electric trikes and scooters on, you know, green swords, where everyone is equal in every way, and there's perfect representation of everyone except for white people across the planet. Another one is, and going from that ligature of climate change down to white privilege. Here's another instance of the thing. The past is always bad, oppressor and oppressed. Instead of the oppressor being humanity in general now, and the victim being the earth itself and all its species, now it's that the white people specifically are the problem. They are the oppressor who destroys everything. You know, they've enslaved the world. They didn't invent things like fucking washing machines, you know, or plumbing. I think we invented plumbing, didn't we? Fucked the Romans up with the lead pipes anyway. We'll see. I think East Asians probably had plumbing too. Anyway, you get my point. White people are bad. They dominate others. They oppress and exploit, right? And the future must be a kind of a payment for those sins. You know, you have to, God, I'm got the fucking religious terminology for, you know, making good on what you did bad in the past escapes me at the moment, but you get my point. So there does seem to be a religion. Do you guys see what I'm getting at? And what I'm trying to do is figure out what the features of it are, because half of the features have been are contrived and have been imposed on the top with programs of ideological subversion like we have in our universities. But a bunch of it's coming from the bottom, and it's where these two things meet that's powering these people's behavior. You could say, yeah, teach them something different. Great, that's good. I get it. Yes, we should teach them something different. We shouldn't allow them to be indoctrinated in schools. But half of this is coming from the bottom up, not from the top down. And that means that there are latent forces within these people that are being manipulated and directed. And if we want to have any hope of sort of, you know, pulling up from this nosedive, we have to know what those forces are, how all of this is manifesting. Let's see, non-theistic religion. Yes. Waterpenny brings up transhumanism. I'm not sure that really fits. Well, no, it would have to fit into the picture bigger, into the bigger picture in some fashion. I don't think transhumanism would fit as the whole explanation, but I think transhumanism is probably a little side project that's designed to appeal to a certain group. Possert says most commies are white, so Jews inventing communism is irrelevant. I don't know where that came from. I'll be taking up related topics with that in BitChute. All right, let's see here. Do these religious people recite mantras or prayers? Yes, they recite mantras like do better. I mean, that would be cool to just make a list, or you guys can throw it in the comments section. Resist the urge to make too much fun. What are the things that they really all chant? I mean, really, like, that are just so common that it's behind the scenes in everything they do and say. I'm going to make a little list here called mantras. One of them is do better, right? And that's the idea that, you know, I've got to work harder. There's always something else that has to be fixed, something that I have to do penance for in my past. So yeah, throw any of their phrases, because that could be their mantras, and making a list of them could help to show this clearly. All right, resist indeed, resist. and usually all by itself. No justice, no peace. See, this perfectly illustrates what I was talking about how you got the stuff that's spontaneous and the stuff that comes from above as an imposition. Because, you know, like no justice, no peace, all that, you can see the fucking dickweeds sitting around their table with their red bandanas on their heads and stuff, chatting about, you know, Che Guevara or whatever, and writing down no justice, no peace, and talking about how it's really going to click and it's going to be great. That's imposed from above. We got to look for the ones that really do feel more like they spontaneously arose, like the ones that seem more like the answer to the propaganda that, Nash, we're better than you. We're better than you. That might be good. There is an aspect to that. That was right there. And what's her name? That Armenian chick on the Young Turks saying that, yeah, I'm better than you or whatever. That really did come out naturally. That felt like a spontaneous and natural one. So that's we're better than you. That's the chosen people aspect. I'm playing with that too, because it seems, you know, on one hand, we used to have this shit back in the day, once upon a time, where it was the many gods, right? And then we had the one God. And now it seems like we have something else that's the many who are one, many one. All right, fight the power. Yeah, fight the power. That's fundamentally that adolescence. So there's no justice, no peace too, which is, you know, like, Mom, as long as you don't give me what I feel I deserve, I'm going to make your life a misery. I used to do that to my mother as a teenager. Fight the power. All right. Wow. What else do we have? Impeach. No Trump, no KKK, no fascist USA. Yeah, that's just a commie faggotry. It just doesn't come out. You need the stuff that really chant sentences, urges, perform action, collective action, take to the streets. Yeah, that's one I've given a lot of thought to, is the difference between talking about the road, because that's so fundamental to Indo-Europeans, and this whole commie thing of the streets. You know, like the road is something that you go out on solo. Maybe I'm getting over into poetry speculation territory, but that's always been a big thing for me. When I left this woman I was crazy about, or we split up, it was mutual. I remember telling her, don't confuse the streets for the road, because the streets are just, it's such a plebeian, like a, you know, the robbing on the streets, talking shit on the streets, jiving and hustling on the streets. You know, it's a very different thing than the road. And it's most like perfectly embodied in the gypsy, you know, where you've got the idea of them wandering the earth, and that's life on the road. That's kind of a nomadism, but then each strength has as its heart its own weakness. So the streets are the weakness of the road, right? The road is the virtue, the streets is the vice, you know, and instead they get involved in petty crime and, you know, yeah. I don't know what the fuck I was just talking about. Excuse me, people. We need something that comes out naturally in their speech. What else? Open roads, city streets, stripper days for old Ollie. Jesus Christ, how did strippers come into this? Road is different from the streets. Yes. All right, peoples, we're looking for bash a fash. That's more just that's adolescent too. The rhyming of it and the nature of it, it has the smell of something crafted from above, but it's designed to appeal to a teenager who just wants to break something. You will not divide us. Huh. Wasn't that, what's his name? That obnoxious actor? You think he really came up with that on his own? Will not divide us. God, it's just so stupid and malevolent, because all they're doing is dividing each other, and then to say you will not divide us, it's just, that just has that stinks of the Frankfurt School. Okay. Okay. Be nice in the comments, peoples. Shia LaBeouf. Yeah, what a cat turd. All right. They focus on diversity. That is one that popped from above, but I'll note it. Okay, it seems like that's about as far as this is going to go. Unless you guys have some, yeah, philosophical underpinnings of the left are adolescent in nature at best. Absolutely, I've argued for it. It's actually, and I think it's baked in. It was designed to be that way. People are doing it on purpose because they intend to exploit just that aspect. That's why, you know, the Woodstock in the 60s becomes like a symbol of rebellion for each subsequent generation. All right, check your privilege. See, that's more top-down stuff, but yes, it does hook them well. So, right, remember, we're looking here for the mantras. The idea is, in theory, people, that once we assemble enough of their statements, we can sit there and have one of these meditative, or I should say contemplative moments, and in reviewing them suddenly begin to see, wow, there's a pattern here. Here are the clear pieces of their faith, as it were. It gives me that. Gives me that. I love me some gives me that. That's not going on the list. All right. What else do we have? Polymorphous perversity. What do we have here? Race is a social construct. Yeah, that's one that was fed to him. Mass thoughts and jumbles. If Govan Angsley is newly arrived and is asking, as I think is the case, what the nature of this exercise is, it is in order to lay out all the different things that believers in what I hypothesize is a new faith of progressivism say, and treat them as though we're looking at mantras or a catechism, and use it to better understand what their faith is. All right, what do we have here? Everything, yeah, hybrids are always stronger. That's interesting. Not quite a mantra I would hear, but it's a presumption I need to give some thought to. We are the world. That came straight out of, what was it, Coca-Cola or whatever? We are the world. We are the children. That came straight out of a advertising workshop. Coexist, that fucking bumper sticker. Oh my God. Time I see it now, I want to laugh and projectile vomit. Okay. Speak power to truth. Okay. It looks like we've reached the limits of this exercise. Gender is a social construct. Yes, indeed. Think globally, act locally. That's another one that came straight out of a advertising farm. But you're right, like, you know, slow food and, you know, sustainable. God, I was just buried in that in advertising. That is everywhere. And to a large extent, that is all, that's top-down shit. It's like you don't get enough top-down shit from the universities now, and from television. Now you have to get it directly from that advertising agencies, a la Gillette. And you know what? While we're on that subject, I need to make a point there, because as Porridge was talking in our discussion that we did, we were talking about Gillette and stuff, and I was like, yeah, I don't know if it's coming, you know, from further upstream, if it's coming from P&G, you know, or if it was a successful pitch from a production company or the advertising agency. Well, some people have posted content that makes it, you know, since then. In any case, I hadn't seen it at the time. And it's somebody who's in charge of branding in general, I think, further upstream than Gillette in P&G itself. And he flatly says they're doing it from now on. It's all about social justice. And they recognize, you know, woke capital or whatever you want to call it, that they need to drop money into getting these social justice messages across. It's not just about whatever service or product they might be offering. They've got this obligation to socially engineer everyone. And I have seen other stuff of that sort, and I didn't bring it up in the discussion with Porridge. And it's, I think it was Omnicom. I saw some folks, and they're just a fucking enormous global holding company for advertising agencies, as I understand it. And they're saying the same kind of thing. There are people who they now have a C-level officer. So, you got a chief executive officer, a chief marketing officer, a chief information officer, all this kind of shit, right? The C-suite, the people who are directly answerable to the board who are running the corporation. A lot of these advertising agencies are agitating for the idea of C-level officers who are all supposed to have as their focus social responsibility, a la, once again, the Gillette advertisements, that that are supposed to deal with Me Too problems and toxic masculinity. So I wanted to mention that because I didn't go into it when we were talking about advertising before, and I felt it should be covered. Maybe I'll do a video about it. I'm going to do some research, but it seems like there's a lot more coming from further upstream. That in the case of this Gillette thing, it really is being pushed from above, as it apparently is over at Omnicom 2. So yeah, and in that last clip, I argued that I thought that, a lot of that social virtue signaling stuff didn't work in business. And the fact that they're paying and dropping money and effort into it, that they're getting the house of brands, billions per year, transnational corporations like P&G on board to force it down our throats, I think argues for the idea that it doesn't work very well rather than against it, because they're having to dump so much money into it to make it happen. All right, speak your truth. Oh, no, that's a good one. Speak your truth. Speak your truth and never again. Those are good. See, you know what that is? That's it, man. Speak your truth and never speak your truth. Never again. What it is it's my thing about past qua past. Past qua past is bad. Therefore, never again. That fits. That's a mantra. That's a part of the catechism. That is a keystone of this whole fucking arch of crap. That one right there. Never again. Excellent. Okay. What else do we have here? Victims speak out. Love sees no color, but pays a toll nonetheless. Wow. My body, my rights. That's another one that got pumped from above. Words can be violence. Oh, that deserves some looking into. I've looked into that in a clip. I think it was one on hate speech, in which I argue that what you're dealing with is whenever you've got multiculturalism, it demands hate speech. You can't have one without the other, because multiculturalism means that, if I want to exercise my freedom of speech and say Muhammad sounds like a dilrod, the culture living right next to me, cheek by jowl, of Muslims, according to their culture, under this multiculturalist system, I'm supposed to be killed for saying that. So yeah, multiculturalism requires the idea that hate speech roll right along with it, and that weapons be confiscated, because multiculturalism ensures that you're going to be in an environment where the situation is far too volatile for two things: an armed population or the ability to speak your mind. That, frankly, is why multiculturalism is suicide. We can support a considerable amount of multi-ethnicity, but not multiculturalism. All right, what else do we have here? By any means necessary. That's straight out of the Communist Manifesto. All right. What about the children? Wow. That's just a standard go-to, because it kicks off the parent and protective instinct. Diversity muck fry. All right, 104 watching. Somebody hit the goddamn like button, you bitches. All right. 5 Muslim babies. The left has been murdering our language. Yeah, they have, man. And it's poisonous and really destructive. All right. What do we have here? Multiculturalism means we all died together. Yeah, you know what? Fuck all of them. Okay, so there's another point here about this idea of the religion that I'm playing with, and that is the idea, Tim used to mention it years ago, is in psychology, the prescribers of pills, the pill gobblers and pill flingers, pill worshipers, pill hoarders, pill prescribers, they have a big thing where you're not supposed to you're supposed to suppress anything in a situation of, you know, mental illness or psychological problems. You're supposed to get rid of delusional content, right? The idea is that if, whoa, this guy is hallucinating, let's give him whatever we have to give him so he's no longer hallucinating. Tim pointed me to thinkers like Jung. Another one is John Weir Perry. Did some great books, Lord of the Four Quarters, The Far Side of Madness on schizophrenia, a bunch of interesting stuff. He pointed me to Eric Neumann, you know, and anyway, his thing was to treat the delusional material, the delusional content as real and subject it to analysis. And that's really, I think, a lot of what we have to do, what I'm trying to do here with this notion of just straight out, not fucking around, looking at this shit we're confronted with progressives as a religion. All right, what do we have here? What's going on? Take your meds. Yes, indeed. We're all Soylent Green. What we have here? Are you angry? Yeah. Why aren't you reasonable? I covered that shit in Rational Intolerance. All right, let's see here. I'm concerned. Wow, yeah. That's that whole intervention, hand wringing. Ugh. Oh my God. That's how they, it's a flanking maneuver. Once that begins, when they give you the I'm concerned thing, you know, then you know that someone is trying to steal a march on you and flank and encircle you. It means you're about to be attacked from the rear. By that, I mean attacked metaphorically by someone that you thought you could trust. All right, where are we here? America was never great. Okay. Okay, people. Yes. Well, then what do we have for further things that I want to tap on? We have example instances of climate change narrative, white privilege narrative. Past qua past is always bad. Do better, I think, is a major catechism. Never again is a part of it too. You know, the always receding future state. There's something about the, you know, the breaking down of male and female. I don't know how I feel about it. A lot of people, I think, misinterpret the androgyne as an alchemical figure. So a lot of people be like, oh man, you know, the Masons and all the rest of them, you know, it's all a cult, and they want to, you know, the whole thing about transgender has to do with creating the androgyne. And I'm like, Jesus fucking Christ, there's symbolism about psychological processes. And not only do you have to think about the like Jungian idea of anima and animus as masculine and feminine aspects of the soul that have to be integrated in order to work together, but you even go back to older ideas where you can see it in the emblems for prudence, where you've got an old man and he's a wrinkled beard and he's all fucked up and he's, you know, like this. But the back of the old man's head is a young woman's face who's looking at a mirror. And that's the idea that his soul, his anima, is feminine in relation to him. And the old wise man, through his soul, can look in the mirror of the past in order to see the future. And that virtue is called prudence, which is why she's represented that way. So you get it, like the old man's face is facing this way, the young woman's head is sticking out the backside, the young woman is looking at the mirror while she looks into the mirror, which is behind her, which means she's looking into the past, into the mirror of memory, and yet the reflection obviously is going to be over her shoulder, which is what's in front of the old man. It's actually an intense fucking emblem, well worth meditating upon and internalizing relative to the virtue of prudence. And that touches upon this androgyne aspect. And a lot of people come in and, oh, you know, the Freemasons, they want transvestite, or transsexual children because they're trying to cause the androgyne. And they'll look at old alchemical shit and they just don't fucking understand it. Its depth or its implications. It's always this kind of crappy, superficial assessment. I don't know where that came from. Okay. What else do we have? I'm a nasty woman. Would you kill baby Hitler? Oh my God, I'd give him a lollipop. Can you imagine you met baby Hitler and you drew a little black mustache on him with a Sharpie? That'd be funny. It'd make a good clip. By the way, we need right-wing comedy. Motherfuckers, identify funny-ass right-wing people and push them front and center. Okay. What else do we have? Nothing jumping out at me. Okay, so we've gotten through this. I don't know how long I've been on here. I have no idea. 7:30 it started. 30, so it's been about an hour and a half, I think. I can do this for a little bit longer. Let's say that we've covered this basic stuff. People will get back in touch with me or think amongst yourselves about this idea of networks, exploiting existing old networks that everybody thinks have no value anymore. Things like just the postal system, right? Normal snail mail or fax machines or, BBS stuff. Take a look at that. Think about ways that they could be used in an overlapping way such that the various aspects of the one primitive network may shore up weaknesses in the other, and taken as a whole, they might be much more useful. Okay, so that's one. Another one is the idea of manifesto, bad word, shared values, document, something that is a way of getting down on paper things that everybody agrees that they want to do and change so they can cooperate in doing so without falling prey to becoming some transnational globalist vehicle for subversion. How can nationalists cooperate internationally when they all have their different national interests and their own unique variations on their program and what they want to see done? What are the core elements? Could that be put together to have a tent that everybody could gather in and therefore cooperate? If so, how could it be done? And the last one is this idea that we're truly facing a new religion, and calling them commies or calling them progressives, whatever, they're a religion. And yes, it's contrived in part top down, but it's also spontaneously arising, perhaps in response to the ticklings and manipulations coming from above, but in large part spontaneously from below. It's all coming together. And it is a religion. And in order to most effectively deal with it, we need to recognize it as such. And we have to go past what I understand at President Vogelin, who I haven't started reading yet, but I got the book and I'm going to check it out thanks to the guy who told me about it. We have to go further than just saying, oh yeah, we recognize ideologies, totalitarian ideologies. They're basically religions. Okay, great, fine. But we're dealing with a specific one right now. And I want to know how that animal is put together. If I want to butcher it and carve it up, I need to know where the joints are, right? What am I going to clip? Where am I going to cut? How do I get the blade between the skin and the fat or whatever, right? I want to be done with it. But in order to be done with it, metaphorically speaking, I have to know what it is. How do its joints articulate? What's its locomotion? To jump from the metaphor of the body to a car, how does the engine provide energy to it? How's the, transmission run to apply force to the wheel so it can roll across the ground? Only when we name this religion that I've tentatively called the faith of many one, only when we recognize it for what it is, a religion, and understand its parts and pieces, its aims and goals, its doctrine and doxology, if you will, only then will we be able to most effectively confront it. So those three are done. I guess I will start taking questions in the comments section. All right. Amanda Anderson's asking me if I'm sure I can go on longer without a smoke. I have to get better at spans of time between when I smoke. Otherwise, I'm going to drop dead too soon. There's still a bunch of shit I want to do. Okay. Looks like I've missed all sorts of things in the comments section. 103 people watching. Smash the fucking like button, motherfuckers. Let it be known that you appreciate this. If, of course, that happens to be the case. All right. I'm looking for good questions, good remarks. Jen Bannister says, the true threat to whites is not migrants, it's white women not procreating. How do you make women leave college, careers, nightlife, foreign holidays, and travel, and have them make babies instead? I don't want to try to be too cute, but you can't make them do shit. It's just not going to happen ever. I think you have to present them with their choices in a different way, but there's no making them. And if you did, it would produce a woman that was more compliant. And I think the great power of Western culture is that we don't have compliant women. I mean, go all the way back to looking at the idea of Spartan women, and there are all kinds of problems with Sparta. I don't want to idealize it over much, but if we want to tap a point in history that kind of acts as an emblem for empowered femininity in the West, one of them is the women of ancient Sparta. Do you want to have a sniveling, cowering group of women that will do as they're told? I would imagine you don't. And I'm probably giving too much attention to your thing about quote unquote making them. I doubt you would want that, but I did want to get the point across. All right. But how? I don't know. That would have, I'd have to do, I need to work with some really smart women who can help me to get my head around the way in which things need to be phrased to reach women. I'm not, I don't get heard quite often because of how I choose to say things. Right? That's a problem with women, the tone of how you speak to them. And again, generalizing, but generally the rule holds true. It's how you speak to women. You can be like, I love you. And they'll be like, fuck off, don't talk to me that way. Or if you say, you're a fucking bitch, the most wonderful fucking bitch I've ever seen, they'll be like, really? Right? It's tone, it's mood. There's something going on with females, and this is something that I eventually want to write on academically, but basically you got division. Oh God, I'm going to go down this whole road. Basically, you got the division and functions how women and men work together in a primitive environment. Men are hunting, and that means they need to stay the fuck quiet. They need to move quietly. They need to literally engage in not pissing as soon as they go into their hunting areas, because if they do piss where they hunt, they're going to come back and there's no game. It's all about containment. It's all about holding it in, right? You have to not piss. They have the idea in old traditions of not engaging in sex before you go hunting, or the mistress of the beasts would be unhappy with you. I think it's related in some ways through hunting and warfare to the idea that, you're not supposed to fuck before a boxing match, right? The idea that will take something from you of your vital energy. War parties, hunting parties, male societies, it's all about getting out there, and you have to be quiet. And there's hierarchy. Because there are younger and older hunters. There are more and less experienced hunters. There are people who know the track and the scats, who carry the animal shit in their horn of fumets and can look at it and see if it's knobbly or if it's moist, how long ago the animal went through there, whether it's healthy or not, what its size is, whether it's male or female. That's all shit that any competent hunter can tell simply by looking at footprints, gait, the pattern of the gait, the shit on the ground, whether or not they're rubbing, given what the season is, if they're in a wallow, if they're young nearby. That's how men operate. But women are moving around in groups. And even if we assume, because Tim hammered me about this, he's like, don't assume that babies are always loud. In our culture, they are. But he's like, in primitive situations, you're probably not going to have as many squalling infants. Nevertheless, babies make more noise. And that means women who are dealing with carrying the babies and dealing with them, there's a certain amount of silence they're not going to be able to have. They're not going to be able to achieve it. Not like a hunting party that's not only not speaking, but is dealing with gesture language, a thing, as I always joke, that we see reflected in current events when in movies and things, the soldiers are going out and they're like, go, go. It's the unconscious aspect of repeating what we know in our lore is how men behave. They have to do these gestures and be quiet because it goes with hunting parties. It goes with war parties. They just happen to do it in the same stupid way as though, we're all supposed to know now that this means stop for infantry or something. Anyway, it's stupid. It's shallow, but it illustrates the point, which is that men communicate in silence. Women can't. So they're cooperating. Now they've got to have their eyes on other things. Maybe they're nursing, maybe they're spinning. In really ancient times, maybe they're wearing their joints out, leaning over a simple hollowed out stone that becomes a millstone, because this earliest agriculture, they didn't have, wind power or water wheels. They were milling their flour with a rock on the ground, and they'd sit there for hours on their knees just doing this. And they spent the rest of their time weaving, and they spent a lot of their time washing. But the vast majority of a woman's time was spent in weaving. Now, spinning, you can do it on your own. And we have old plates and things of women with their drop spindle and their distaff and everything. And they might have a kid in this arm and their spindle over here. And they're somehow adept enough because they had to be spinning all the time. But it's much more cooperative when you get into things like gathering, or let's not call it agriculture, but let's call it gardening, right? The kind of gardens that women would have around their houses, dealing with the children, washing, cooking. They work together. But they can't have their eyes on each other in the kind of way that men do when they're hunting or on their game, because they've got multiple tasks. They've got to keep an eye on the kid. They got to deal with who's running and whatever they're doing. So essentially, instead of the thing of silence, their path is they're cooing sounds to each other that happen as an ambient thing. So they're much more sensitive to your tone and how it indicates a general mood than they are to the specific words that you happen to be saying. Again, exceptions aside, but that I think is one of the biggest things that contributes to, when you're in an argument with a woman, you're like, Jesus Christ, I just said, I chose those words for a reason. I was just trying to tell you that I'm willing to do this, this, and this. And that's why I said this, this, and this. And I said them in this order. And that's why grammar works the way it does, because we have a language and we have this thing called syntax. And I'm trying to fucking speak to you. If you would listen to the words, you would understand me. And all they're reading is the fucking tone. And you're like sinking deeper and deeper and deeper because they don't give a shit in general. Many don't give a shit. They care about the emotional tenor of what's being communicated to them because they're used to reading it in order to understand whether they're safe or not. So again, exceptions aside, yeah. In order to figure out how to deal with women and to get them to have more children in some fashion or another, yeah, you can't make them, and you'd have to work with someone who is much better at producing the comforting background noises that make them feel safe than I am. All right. What's going on in the background here? 6 cent soldiers, hello. Sounds like you're on the road. Drive safely. What else here? Thoughts on masturbation. Is it necessary for men to avoid masturbation in order to reach a higher level of consciousness? I don't know. You're going to find most of the stuff I've come across that relates to that with different hypotheses. I haven't seen any hard Western science on it, so I'm not knowledgeable enough to tell you anything about that. But you can find the idea of semen retention in Taoism and some of the tantric stuff. And there's plenty of popularized Western stuff that goes into the different theories of how retention of semen can yield more chi or power. You can find it easily enough. I haven't looked at it in so long and didn't know that much about it, so I can't say for sure. All right, what else do we have here? I'm not even reading conflagrans insanguine angulorum's comments. Okay. What do you think about the idea of the leftist religion being an expression of feminine power structures, manipulation instead of force? I definitely think that's a part of it. As long as we distinguish between that and true matriarchy. Because like a lot of people come in and be like, the Jews, they're a matriarchy. The Jews are a matriarchy, and therefore they're trying to impose matriarchy on us. I'm like, no, they're matrilineal. They're not a matriarchy. So yeah, there's definitely an aspect to those feminine power structures, but then you got to kind of look at the why, right? Because it's like the slow blade penetrates the shield, or the idea of the droplet of water that wears through a stone with this patience, or like the idea of yin and yang, right? This idea of yin force that's always retreating, back from whatever thrusts forward from the yang side, right? Is it because it's feminine? Because I mean, I know plenty of men who can behave like emotional bitches and engage in all kinds of stuff about, defaming people quietly behind their back and gossip and indirect ways of acting. As a matter of fact, there are a lot more of them now than there were when I was a kid. It's become more acceptable. So you could say it's feminine in the general sense, but it's latent in both male and female character. Yes, you get probably more of the straightforward shit out of men and more of that out of women, but it's on both sides. So is it really that it's truly a feminine quality? And even if it is it really a useful just yin way? If you're fighting against overwhelming force, then the nature of how you have to fight against it can't be, given that it's overwhelming force, it can't be to meet it with equal and opposite force or greater force, because you don't have it. Therefore, those who subvert, rather than just openly impose, they're always going to be using some sort of feminine approach. And it makes good sense strategically. All right. White Eyes TV says, not jerking off will provide a higher level of consciousness. Or maybe that's a question rather than a statement. I don't know. You probably end up feeling pretty tense unless you're getting to get yourself off regularly with like your girlfriend or something. Okay. Yeah, the rocks the cradle. All right, where am I? No fat meme. You as a Jew run Marx's nightmare. Okay. Possert, yes, I will check Discord later and see what you got on the networking idea. Women can also open the gates for invaders. Yes, they can. So can men. The betrayer is sort of a central character in all cultures, places, and times. He's always there to be found. Okay. Well then, what else do we have for some questions? If this begins to wind down, if you guys aren't motivated in particular, I'll go off and drink more beer. It's 9:15, so what? I start at 7:30 to 8:30, 8:30 to 9:30. Yeah, I'm going to wrap this by 10 for sure anyway, and maybe sooner depending on. Let's see. What am I drinking? I am drinking something called Terrapin Moo-Hoo. I don't feel very macho at the moment. It's a dark, higher alcohol content beer. It's they call it chocolate milk stout. I don't know. I like stouts. Maybe it's because I smoke. I like my beers to be heavier, and I like high gravity. So I like really high alcohol, heavier, syrupy, darker beers, or whatever the hell you call them. Okay. But I do. I also like, if I'm going to drink something that's lighter, I like a fresh kush, or yeah, that's pretty much it. I like dark beers, man. Stouts and heavier and darker. Okay. What are the questions we have, ladies and gentlemen? Semigod wants to do. I'm not fucking with White Eyes TV. I'm not fucking with him at all. If it sounds like I'm trolling you, it was incidental, man. It's all good. You've been watching my channel for ages. No disrespect. Okay. That stuff will rot your guts. Yeah, well. Does anyone know the artist who made the skeleton horse statue on Frank Zappa's Deathless Horsey? No. But I might be moving to Montana soon. Gonna be a dental floss tycoon. All right. Astrology says we're leaving Pisces and entering Aquarius. Yeah, they've been talking about the age of Aquarius since fucking the mid-1980s. I had to live through all of that. What European country would you migrate to if you had to? I don't know. I don't know about that. I'm increasingly interested in Eastern Europe. I don't know. I'd have to go see it again. Hitler's suicide when he saw his gas bill. Oh my God. I should have seen that coming. All right. Great Order is here. Greetings. Okay, this should be interesting. We were brainstorming 3 things, sir, and welcome. Networks, which is coming up with networks that will allow for us to get around existing bottlenecks from those who exercise control. So I was looking at fax machines, fact sheet 5 type shit, post office boxes, postal money orders, maybe BBSs, maybe some crossover with all 3 of them. Another topic was manifesto creation, trying to find some fundamental things on the right that can be agreed on that provide an opportunity for folks who otherwise disagree on many things to at least get behind a certain number of things they can all agree on. Not forming a party or anything like that, but trying to come up with ways to say, yeah, we want to cooperate internationally without being globalists in any way. And in order to do that, we have to sort of figure out what the sort of minimum things that we all agree on are. And the last one was insights. You know, I've been poking at this idea of trying to figure out more about, to take more seriously this idea that the left, progressives, whatever, that forget about the ideology, forget about communists or that. They're a fucking religion, and they should be explicitly acknowledged as a religion. And instead of just saying, yeah, they're a religion, we should look at, well, okay, but what religion? What's the catechism? What are the features of the religion? How do we best understand it? There's a whole bunch previously in the stream about that. But yes, greetings and welcome. Okay, what else do we have here? White Eyes TV, catch you next time. Thanks for dropping in. Soy beer, oh my God, there will be no soy beer. So yeah, Great Order, where we are now is we're basically just taking questions sort of at the end here. Got a little bit of time left, between 10 and 40 minutes, depending on how this goes, whether or not I feel like I'm inspired or if I'm just running my mouth and standing on my own dick. If we name the leftist religion, this from El Vaquero 555, it needs to be subtly pejorative. Why, of course, sir. It certainly does. And in order to fucking make it as mordant, as biting, as stinging as possible, we have to really understand what the religion is, because when you really name the beast, when you really name the demon, that's when you have control over it. If we fully understand the nature of this religion, the act of naming it, going past my hypothetical idea of many one, you know, the worship of many one, if we name it right, yeah, it can be mocked into annihilation. Will Assad protect the Kurds? I don't know. If the U.S. doesn't, Assad's got nothing but to gain by using them. The issue will be whether or not the Kurds get in the way of whatever Russia's plans are. All right. How is kindness turned into a pathology, and how do we allow such pathology to develop? Well, I can't answer that question until I finish my research into the nature of this religion, because the answer to your question is kind of like the answer to mine about what is the religion and what are its constituent parts. Why does it work the way it does? Or how does it work the way it does? Okay. Well, oh my God, this whole section's blowing up, man. Why does Tim always focus on China being the main threat when in reality it's Israel? I don't know that he or I would agree with you that it's Israel. So that might explain it, simply that he doesn't believe Israel is the primary threat. All right. Neo-communism is the anti-white religion. Yeah, I think there's a part of it, but that's what I touched on before. I just named you two instances of how this unrecognized background religion manifests, and one of them was, yeah, the idea that whites are bad. The past is always bad. The white past therefore must be really bad, and we have to march towards the future, and it involves a whole series of actions of penance by whites, self-abnegation, self-destruction, nihilistic crap that whites must do. But that's one. You can also look, there's another one that they use, and it's the idea that all humans are bad, and that we're destroying Mother Earth, and climate change will destroy everything, and that we've always been a pox on the planet. We're like vermin on the planet, and it just wants to be green and golden, full of midichlorians and with shining sun, and everyone, like I was saying earlier, gets around on electric scooters or drinks their Starbucks for free. So yeah, the communism has this anti-white dimension, but the religion as a structure that manifests in different ways, one of them being the climate change myth, the other one being the whites are evil myth. It has a number of ways it manifests. So you look for the common features of them. So that's why I said the past is always bad. Well, we're facing a climate crisis because our past is bad and people are bad. Right, so we have to go towards the future, and we have to keep it from being a bad thing, and we have to make this ever-receding horizon be a good thing. And that can manifest as the climate change myth, or it can manifest as the whites are bad myth. In the one case, we've got to reduce our population and our carbon footprint and everything else, so that we're just not a blight on this planet. We just need to hold ourselves back, and we need to do things differently, and we need to do better. And in the other case, it's like, oh my God, we white people, we're so bad. We need to, back up and, give room for other people and not, oppress everyone and not destroy and enslave and, destroy the earth. And, so they crisscross in some places where it's white people are destroying the planet. But the climate change myth in and of itself, yeah, it's being sold to white people, but it's not race specific. But again, I get that they come together, and there is definitely that white aspect, but they're the bones of it. I want the more fundamental bones that are behind the scenes that manifest in so many different versions of the narrative. Okay. Fuck, where am I now? Slavery's not so bad. The religion of deconstruction, that's also kind of nihilism. That's why everybody's gotta check out Max Stirner, because again, both Nietzsche and Marx were driven to produce all the shit that they produced after a crazy encounter with Max Stirner. He's the one who first kind of like showed the bald, empty face of you know, idealism. You know, he was a young Hegelian, and he kind of rode off from there in a new direction and said that it's all relative, it's all false. He's sort of like the father of nihilism in some ways. All right, let's see here. Only one dislike, that's positive. Well, yeah, wait around. People will give me more of them, I feel sure. Isn't it ironic? Wow. Alanis Morissette, she's one of the, if there's a soundtrack for the women in the new religion, it's somewhere between Sarah McLachlan and, yeah, what's her name, Alanis Morissette. Okay. Boomer says, Semi-Agog, the Clintons, Obama, Bush is on their way to Guantanamo very soon. Well, I don't know about all that, but I will say there's a bunch of shit happening all at once. And I mean, yeah, it's been going on for a while, and I'm hesitant to say, yeah, it seems like we're reaching critical mass, but damn, something's got to give in there. Okay. Oh my God, you fucking don't sing that song about ironic. Okay, what else do we got? The Great Order, man, you got to have something for me. How are you? What's going on? Are we going to talk about the House at some point? Are we going to follow up on that? Look here in the comments section. What else do we have? Do I believe that a way to help with the situation is to incorporate the term identitarian into other fields not previously identified? No, I'm not a real big believer in the identitarian thing. It feels so artificial. And usually where you find identitarianism, it's when they're trying to cobble something new together. And so they have to embrace identitarianism to make it again. Like it almost puts me in mind of things like trying to recreate an almost dead language, or like what you think about with Hebrew, where, you know, they have to knit together an identity. I've been watching a whole bunch of stuff with people in Israel talking about their different ethnicities and the ethnic background and their differing ideologies. And it occurred to me, it's so much like with Turkey, you know, both with Turkey and with Israel, they had to take this wide, disparate population and try to assemble it together based on a nationalist model. In Israel, you know, they could say, well, we share our Jewish race and to some extent our Jewish religion. But how do you say that they're really a nation in the original sense of nationalism? Because they have so many different ethnic strands. In the Ottoman Empire, you had all the business with it having been an empire, you know, with an Ottoman ruling house, but with Armenians and Greeks and Genoese and Venetians and Krim Tatars and Circassians and Azeris and all kinds of people from the Balkans. They have to craft and they have to contrive, they have to create their identity. And I think that it's almost like, I feel like if there's going to be something that you might think of as white identitarian, the simple act of trying to recreate it like an identitarian would do more harm than good. It would be better to recognize it as still being there and strong, you know, and just, you know, turn it back on or wipe whatever, you know, has whatever verdigris off of the surface, polish it bright again or whatever. I don't know if that's useful. Oh, okay. The Great Order is saying for the third time, flat life theory. I thought you were just referencing something in the comments section. I don't know what that is. What is flat life theory? Someone please tell me. I have not heard of that thing. All right, what else do we have here while we're waiting for a response on that? And I'll tell you, man, No White Guilt and Great Order are better at following these comments than I am, man. I am just, every time I feel like I'm starting to catch up, one posts down at the bottom and force scrolls me down to the bottom, at which point I have to go back up and try to figure out where I was with what I had. Yeah, I'm a loser. Okay. The name of religion, flat life theory. Flat life theory is the name of a religion. So I guess what you're getting at is the idea that essentially it's it's part and parcel of it being dialectical materialism, ultimately, that it doesn't have a vertical dimension, a sacred aspect, or, what Spencer would call telos. If so, I think I get it. And I feel you a bit. The name of the left. Yeah. Yes. We need to needs to be even more sharp and biting. All right. Do we have any other questions, people? What do we have? What sorts of things do we have here that we might want to talk about? Do I need to look into your papers? Equality. Is that a suggestion that equality is a topic we should discuss? Equalitarianism? Yeah, fucking egalitarianism. What pisses me off is egalitarian used to mean things like treating everybody the same under the law, which I'm all for. I actually have an early video of mine where I'm like, fucking, yeah, man, I'm all about egalitarian, origins of the United States. And then I realize how it's being used today. This, equality of outcome crap. It's just, no, it means being treated equally under the law. Yeah, the idea of it's great porridge, man. The idea of equality is great porridge. I mean, and it's in crisis, it's useless. Coming back to that thing I mentioned earlier, and in my clip where I was talking to Lovely Porridge, we have these two parallel aspects of society, and one is the break glass in case of fire thing that you do when you're in serious crisis, which is to activate martial law. At which point, we've got a curfew and, drumhead court martial, you'll be shot if you cause a problem, nobody on the streets after midnight. Everything is expedited. Yes, we can find you looting and we can grab you right there, march you around the side of the building and shoot you and you're dead. Like, all the due process shit goes away. Normal civil and criminal law go away, right? And there's a reason that exists parallel to our normal form of government. I think that's something everybody who is arguing too much for collectivization needs to remember. We already have a way to collectivize. We don't need to change our existing government. We have a thing that's called martial law, and it comes online when we have serious problems. But equalitarianism and its attendant mediocrity has no place in that world, which is why you have really strict hierarchy. You don't have a democracy every time a decision gets made. You'd be destroyed. That's why somebody has to be able to command and point their finger, and you have to go up the hill and deal with whatever the problem is. That's it. That gets activated in times of crisis. And so I brought this up, to kind of volley it back at you as regards this idea of equality or equalitarianism, egalitarianism, and all the rest of the bullshit. If the fundamental doctrine is useless in crisis, and I think I just illustrated that it is, the idea that everybody's equal and interchangeable. Yeah, everybody in the Army in theory should be able to, use an assault rifle or whatever the fuck you want to call it, should be able to act as a combat infantryman. Everybody should have attended basic training. Sure, there should be a certain degree of interchangeability, but this idea of equality, no. The idea of absolute equality in the face of crisis yields destruction. You're lost, you're fucked. The whole way that we as peoples across all of the history of the West, and leaving aside other human beings, and you find it paralleled in many ways with them. With the Roman Empire, you had the power of dictator. When there was a serious issue, you'd have imperium, but you would have power above the two consuls. It's just like throwing down martial law, and with it comes hierarchy, is what I'm really hammering on. With that comes hierarchy, and absolute equality and hierarchy can only coexist if you're a relatively advanced civilization. Like, I don't think white people have a problem with them coexisting, because you've got civil law and you've got martial law, and they're both designed for different circumstances. And in theory, the martial law always remains responsive to the commander-in-chief, so there's a civilian head of the military, even in times of crisis, to avoid problems with, somebody taking advantage of the crisis and, subverting the form of government and ending up with a real dictatorship. We get dictatorship out of the idea of the dictator going wrong, but dictator in its original sense did not mean something bad. anyway, this is an aspect that I think everybody should look at when they think about equality. You know, we have a place for it, and it's over here, but it's not a crisis response. That's where, excuse me, hierarchy and the rest comes in, and you, I don't know, where you ain't gotta like it. Okay, so what's going on in the background here? Military tribunals, yes, that's another one. Just sit here and knit as Ollie goes on a squirrel moment. Conflagrans in Sanguine Angelorum says, the Golden One is a valiant son of the Imperium, but the fucker burnt bridges with me. Well, maybe that's because of your beatbox rap. Everybody should go check that out. Or maybe they shouldn't. It's funny, though. Okay, here's a question from Christian League. Christian League is very kindly supported me on Minds, and I want to thank him for that, or her, whatever the hell it is. It looks like Baron Munchausen. Here's a question. If the Germans used Christian symbolism and put themselves out there as Christians, would their fellow Europeans have fallen for the demonization campaign against them? Oh, well, you got to look at who runs most of these demonization campaigns, and you can see that being very... I'm reading one now by this guy, Pacepa, who's a Romanian defector from the intelligence services who, you know, was a big guy in the intelligence services under Ceausescu. A Romanian guy recommended the book, and it's all about, it's called Disinformation, and it's all about the Soviets going after the Catholic Church. So I don't know, did being Christian end up being any kind of protection for Catholics who've now been overrun with Vatican II and liberation theology and commie popes? I mean, the subversive stuff runs in the background, and the question that you have to ask yourself is, you know, what defense do you have against it? There's a great quote, actually. Somebody threw it in the comment section. I need to thank him again. Oh, it's Fassel Goose. Through this, I noted it in here. Where the hell is it? Here it is. This is from 1988, from a Los Angeles Times article remarking on, you know, the thawing of the Cold War stuff and all the movement towards Glasnost and Gorbachev and the Berlin Wall coming down. And here's the quote. Our major secret weapon is to deprive you of an enemy, said Georgy Arbatov, director of the Soviet Academy of Sciences Institute for US and Canada Studies. So I'm not trying to point this just at Russia, but the point here is that the commies and those who are behind them or in front of them or who walk beside them or who operate in a similar way, I don't want to get too far into it, but whoever the fuck they are, that is their fundamental war machine. This idea that our major secret weapon is to deprive you of an enemy. Because, you know, if you don't recognize the religion as a religion, then do you really have, do you have an enemy? How can you attack them? How can you respond to them? How can you defend against them? How can you track where they're moving and what they're doing if they've convinced you that that thing doesn't exist? All right. What else do we have here? Anna Kasparian. Fuck Anna Kasparian. Okay. Let's see here. It's okay to be proud to be white. Yes. I imagine so. I agree. Vatican II. Yeah, everybody should check him out. This guy Pacepa, he's interesting. Yeah, I have a whole. I'm thinking I'm going to do a live stream just with a pile of the books that I'm reading right now and what they go into. If anybody is interested in that. Deplorable says I should come on to Luke Ford's stream sometime. I might do that, but I want to get my thoughts about, you know, what everybody likes to call the Jewish question. I love the fact that the idea of the Jewish question was created by Zionists who wanted to promote the notion of a Jewish question, because then they would promote the idea that that question had to be answered, and the best way to answer it was for the people to move to Israel and thereby build their population and power base there. You know, anyway, yeah, I want to deal with the Jewish question. Once I get it articulated, then I can deal with some of these Jewish content producers and say, hey, check this stuff out of mine. What do you think of it? And let's talk about it. And then I can see what they have to say about it. Oh, fuck, I was just at something that said, I know Pacepa. There we go. Pacu. He was the right hand of Ceausescu. Yes. And everybody needs to read Ioan Culianu too, speaking of Romanians. Okay. What else? Come now, peoples. God damn, man, I need some app that makes reading my chat window less annoying. Okay, great order would go for the book stream. Good. Well, I'll do it then, man. And again, we need to do that one on the home when you get some time. I noticed you've been running lots of content with Jason and a lot of interesting stuff, man. You guys are rocking and rolling. Congrats on that. The channel's looking good, and doing more and more episodes. So yeah, people who haven't checked them out, the Great Order, Jared, he's got his own channel. Check it out. And he also does a lot of stuff with Jason from No White Guilt. They kindly had me on as a guest, and at some point in the future, it's likely I'll have them on as a guest here as well. Check out their content, take a look, go with an open mind and an open ear, and see what you think. I found it to be worth my time, and they're good guys. Okay, so what's next? Ollie knows Anna Kasparian is better than him. Yes, well, pop the chat out and make it bigger on a second screen or something. How do I do that? Pop out chat. Oh my God, Ace Pilto, you are a man. Oh my God, Sailor, you just fucking hooked me up. Awesome. You know, with Luddites like me, it's just such a big deal when you find out these little things that you did not previously know about. John Miller asks, Ollie, have you read Diana West's book? I have a copy of the one about the death of childhood or the death of the grown-up or whatever it is, but I do not have, I'm sorry, but I have not yet read it, and I do have American Betrayal or whatever. I have read that, and what else? And I've got her collection of responses to American Betrayal that she published as a sort of a quick book. So yeah, I've read some of her stuff and I like it. I think she's got her shit together. Boomer tech, fuck you, I'm Gen X, man. All right. That eagle wall is superb, has such vision. I don't know what on earth Joanna Knowles talking about. I think she braided her hair too tight. Okay. I just want to know what race Jews are. Jews are not a race, really, anymore, although there's considerable genetic overlap. Okay. Some say Arab, some say what? They're all over the place. Ethnic, well, I'm going to deal with that in my clip on BitChute. Okay. So, what is she referring to? Waterpenny's now saying I asked him to make prints of that to sell. I don't know what. No, I don't know what they're talking about. Okay, so I have a chat window that's still working. It's 42. I'm going to close this at 10 because you guys are going to get sick of me and start throwing old vegetables. Let's see if we can get some good questions here at the end. And forgive me, you know, if you're somebody who's been asking further up in the stream and I have missed it. All right, let's see. Somebody asked, Semiagog, are you hoping to make a convincing argument to progressives that socialism isn't good or necessary or both? Well, yes, after a fashion, but not by rational argument, but through mockery. All right, what else do we have here? Stealth Creations asks, so have you been getting a kick out of Trump using symbology in fast food candy to not only peg his European and American competitors and enemies? I noticed him using the fast food as another thing to cause them to just begin to foam at the mouth and run in circles, and thereby seem more comical to everybody who doesn't get that worked up about fast food. So that, in some respect, was useful. Am I a civic or an ethnic nationalist? I believe in limited civic and ethnic nationalism, meaning that the civic nationalism has to be mitigated by an ethnic supermajority. But there are a bunch of questions I think that have to be answered in order for that to work. So I'm not a full ethno-nationalist and I'm not a full civic nationalist. And I've argued elsewhere in the clip civic versus ethnic that there's no such thing as pure ethno-nationalism, because simply being of the same ethnic group is not a basis for government. You have to have some covenant or convention, some set of shit that you agree upon. And at the point that you agree upon it, the civic is just another dimension of your government. Just simply putting white people in a room doesn't mean that government simply appears. Will the US make the UK and France turn in their nukes if they become Islamic? I think that will get sorted before it comes to that. It would have to. All right, what the hell? What? Oh, is there a linguistic connection between nihilism and annihilation? Of course there is. Nihil, which means nothing in Latin. Okay. What else do we have? Oh, the Royal Marcrovian Eagle Rock Wall. Yes. Yeah. Had some crazy shit. You know, you girls need to just go visit him. You realize that. Just fly your asses over to Tasmania and visit him. Just stop fucking around. Just do it. All right, let's see. Am I a big fan of SEC football? No. I know almost nothing about it. I know that they run with the ball, they kick it sometimes, and they call that punting or something, and it's oblong. I mean, no offense. I don't know really much about that. I mean, I've heard of things like SEC, that's college, right? So yeah, that's a specific type. If I were going to watch one, I guess I'd watch college, because the rest of it's just kind of gross. At least in college, they're fucking hardcore. They feel like they've gone to war. They want to like have their names be remembered in Valhalla. All right, Semigod, do you think that ancient structures like Petra were built by aliens or the Nephilim? No, I don't. I mean, you'd have to define Nephilim. I mean, biblical giants, right? I think Owen Benjamin said he's actually one of the Nephilim, or his dad was like Nephilim or something. All right. Could I at some point look at how propertarianism would fit into a new state? I took a look. I think I listened to about half of John Mark's clip introducing propertarianism, and that format is just not the format that I need to learn about an ideology like that. I need to be able to grasp the pieces of it faster, because hearing it spoken makes my eyes glaze over. I'm used to grabbing the pieces more quickly. So I'll look online. And answer to your question, Claude Lebeau, I will look online and see if I can find out more about propertarianism. From what I saw, I was like, what the fuck is this shit? It sounds like a new name for a bunch of old stuff. But then again, I did not finish checking it out, and I don't want to dismiss it yet. All right, what else? Football is a distraction for the goyim. Megalith, Ollie, why do you think people commit treason? It's the same old shit. Like, teenagers that get in trouble, they think it's a good idea at the time. You know, every person thinks that they're in some fashion engaged in something that can be defended as being ultimately good or necessary or right and proper. Usually there's something bent or something broken or crossed wires. I mean, and there are a few out there who really are just treasonous scum. Like, they have no moral path or road or sense of an internal standard. But I don't think they're that common. I think they're very, very rare, thank God. Most of them are, it's kind of, I think wasn't it Yuri Bezmenov who said something about, you're just fucked. Once a generation of these people has been raised, you're just fucked. You have to wait and raise another one. They're totally fucked. They're ruined. They're completely spoiled. Our most important national product, which is our successive generations, is ruined because of commie bitches. Ruined. Whole millions, cohorts of people are just there. There's little hope for them. I don't know. We'll see. And so you end up having to do kind of what Moses did, to go out in the desert for 40 years. And the reason, you know, Tim mentioned to me years ago, and it's quite true, the reason he went out for 40 years, because that gave him time to raise 2 generations, completely independent, you know, with the new ideas loaded in. And now since the 60s, they've had about two generations to create a mass of squalling, useless takers, uppers of space. and they want to turn it all into one big diaper party. Okay, what else do we have here? Great order says for propertarianism, go to the source, Kurt Doolittle. I will do that. I heard John Mark mention that, and I just have not had time to yet dig it up. Hopefully he's got some like, quick stuff where it's like a, a card or the executive summary, with bullet points, and I can get the gist of it. Okay, Semiagog, what is the purpose of government in an advanced society? Man, I am so weak with government, which is why I'm playing so much catch up on all this shit and political philosophy and all the rest. I think it's to law enforcement, contract enforcement. Like I know there are all kinds of ANCAP arguments against it, but like with my limited understanding of these things, like I was into Hermeticism and magic and philosophy and poetry and all kinds of shit, like in religion. I never got into politics. So like there are whole areas where I'm weak. So, if I come out here and I go, well, to enforce contracts and, to enforce the law and to secure the national borders, some people may come in and tell me, no, there's another system that could work well. But to my, more or less ignorant, for me, it seems like it's basic stuff like that to provide for the protection of the country, to ensure that the foundational covenant is enforced. So that would be the Constitution and Bill of Rights, arguably the Declaration of Independence, that kind of thing. But I'm very much of the opinion that it needs to, it's always a necessary evil, and that it should always be kept to a small size, and that wherever possible, they should be kept out of interfering in the affairs of men. So in that respect, I'm probably, firmly in a libertarian camp. But see, that's my problem. Then I see people who call themselves libertarian, and I'm like, who's this fucking idiot? It's like anarchists. Like I saw some clip, I think it was where Lauren Southern went to go talk to a bunch of people who called themselves anarchists. And it was, I don't know, it was in the Caribbean islands or something, or down in Central America. And I never have seen such a fucking barking circus of imbeciles. Like I was like, Jesus, as a kid, I used to think of myself, I'm into anarchism, the idea of no government, stay the fuck away from me, let me do my thing. And I'm listening to these fools. They've all turned into slobbering commies. But sorry, I'm going too far afield here. I think the purpose of government is to enforce the national covenant, and then as little else as possible, unless a really strong argument is made. And in general, the principle is that governments as institutions will always arrogate to themselves power in excess of their authority. And that's my big concern. But, mobilize the military, I think, yeah, we'd have to get into separate subjects about whether or not, you have a standing army, whether or not the militia could be more formalized, whether or not you have mandatory military service. So I'm very open-minded now, and not probably as knowledgeable as I should be. I tend to be, I'm learning that there are ways where, libertarianism, in order to have libertarianism, you almost have, it's again, that idea of the parallel structures. Civil and criminal law under normal civil circumstances is over here, and that's where you want individualism and you want the English common law. But because hierarchy and cooperation are necessary in times of crisis, I feel like, yeah, I buy Tim's thing about a mandatory conscription in the military where everybody does that service, which means that you're ready to operate in both roles. I think people who've been in the military, but who are open-minded and free-thinking, and it's sort of my mantra, mind your own business and expect the same. I think those are the best people once they get out of the military and they're in civilian life, because they want to be left alone. They've seen what it's like to have Uncle Sugar breathing down their neck all the fucking time. So once they get out, they're like, great, man, I can do what's, I'm not GI, I'm not government issue. I'm not owned by Uncle Sugar. I am my own person again. And yet they've done that service. And so I think those kind of military folks, I don't know, maybe it's kind of like giving them a vaccination against collectivism. Like they've done a type of collectivism, but it's a type of collectivism that's hyper effective, or we wouldn't have kept it. And yet it has a strong hierarchy. And so, I don't know. These days, I tend to think that if they're not totally brainwashed, that military people are probably, military service is a good antidote against the further spread of good vaccination against the further spread of the collectivist doctrines. What do I know? Okay, 6 minutes left, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry people have been hanging. Inoculation against tyranny, yes. Joanna Nola's out. Good night to you. Thanks for leaving without saying goodbye. Okay, Amanda Anderson is calling me a squirrel. You know what I like about squirrels? I studied them for a while, man. My favorite thing is how they move, and then they just stop. I can't even stop as solid as a squirrel. A squirrel will like run up, and everything with the squirrel is out ends. It ends in absolute motionlessness. I think it's a good meditation. If you'd had Chinese, martial arts masters in the U.S. back in the day, they would have had the squirrel form instead of the tiger and the rest. No drunken monkey, man. I think squirrel kung fu needs to happen. Okay. Having been in the military, I'd rather not have mandatory service. Having unreliable shitbirds watching my back would give me nightmares. I hear you, Ace Pilto. And that's funny. I learned the term shitbird from my family members who were in the military. It seems to be a good word. Yeah, but I think that, if you have the mandatory service and you build the culture over time, I don't think all of them would suck. But yeah, I've heard the stories about fucking new guys. Do I think, Patrick says, Semigog, do you think European Americans should construct Confucian-style temples to venerate their ancestors? No, I think that we should consider, for those who wish to, reimagining and reintroducing some version of the practice of having masks of the ancestors in the atriums. Maybe I'll talk with great order about this if we end up doing a clip on the house. But, in the Roman atrium, you had your masks of your ancestors, or you were allowed to have them if they were of a certain rank, the higher magistracies, like, a praetor or a consul. I can't remember where they drew the line. Consul certainly would be included. And a lot of people we see today, they'll be in the living room, there'll be this picture with all the walls, this area that is a wall that has all the pictures of your family. And, you can see the old black and white photos of your great grandmother, and they're up there on the wall with your mom and your dad or your children, and it kind of shows the family line. I think that latent there is an opportunity to have some sort of, I don't want to say worship, veneration is probably straddling the line, but I would wish to say memorialization and respect, remembrance of one's ancestors in a way so that the memory of them is a living thing that shapes one's activity today. That goes into that whole clip about the house that I went into before. You can find it on my channel if you haven't seen it. It's within the last 3 or 4 clips. All right. Only those that put into the system should vote. Yeah, I fucking agree 100%. I say mandatory military service and that anybody's on welfare for more than X period of time. Tim says the instant you go on it, you lose your right to vote. I'd say maybe make it 6 months or something. I don't know. I don't know enough about it. I don't have the figures at my fingertips, but I tend to agree. Landowning white males, sure. But I really don't want to let go of the women, man. I think that central to our effectiveness is ever more effective, formidable women. And believe me, I've dealt with the bad aspect of females plenty in my life, but I'm just not ready to turn loose of this idea that they should be more self-actualized and aware and effective and formidable and intelligent and educated. Like I still haven't figured that out yet. So what else here? Squirrels have the craziest fights. Right on. Do I still think the cathedral of the new religion is the shopping mall? I don't know, man. Mr. Lixme put the, however you would pronounce that sequence of letters, put forth the good idea that there's also the virtual temple, of television space, the digital realm. So, all right, what else do we have here? Do I think we're heading towards a one world government and a cashless society? I think that we'll not go into a cashless society because Tim likes to say we'll never do without cash because politicians have to take bribes. Now we'll see what happens with blockchain and Bitcoin and Ethereum and all these other variants. I know that a lot of people are trying to push for a one world government, which is why, we had the League of Nations and then the United Nations and then every fucking TV show, you know, the classic example being the Star Trek with the Federation, you know, one world government for Earth. They've been pushing that forever. It's all this commie shit. It's always, you know, united, diverse, peace, and all they're after. They're offering the same kind of peace that you get under Islam, the peace of submission and obedience. Fuck them. What are my thoughts on eugenics? I don't like the idea of state-mandated eugenics, although I'd keep an open mind because maybe somebody, given advances in genetics, could make a case to me where they're like, yeah, if we take care of this, then we take care of this. You know, and I'd be like, oh yeah, well, let's take care of this. But anything that's run by the state, I just as soon, because it will be perverted and turned to the wrong purpose. I mean, that's redundant. They'll fuck it up. The state will take it and fuck it up somehow, because that's what states do. However, I am all for what could be called eugenics if we're talking about it within the framework of a family, because that's just called good breeding. That's why I don't have a child yet. I haven't found a woman fit yet to be the child's mother, who will also put up with me. I mean, I've met a few women who would have made good mothers, but then there's also the problem they have to be able to put up with me. All right. We're coming up on the close here, ladies and gentlemen. Let me see. I'll take one more question if there are any good ones here, because we're at 10 o'clock. Sorry for those who are just arriving now. Before I split, I want to ask all you guys to hit the like button if you don't mind. I thank you for making time to listen to me ramble all over the place with this. And I am thinking that I will probably, I've been live for, good gracious, since 7:30, so 2.5 hours, I think. In the future, I am going to try to do some more directed live streams because, you know, there's just a certain, the smallness, the terseness of answering the small question, the small question, the small question, that it has its limits, I think. So I want to try to do some that are directed like this one. So it was an experiment. Thank you all for sticking with me. Okay, so here's the last question from the Great Order. It actually is a good one. What would I look for in a woman? I mean, there's obvious stuff. You want to look at them and physically see something that you like, because it's not just the shallow, superficial shit. There's an enormously complex set of relationships that get established when you take a look at a woman and you begin to like get a sense of whether or not she's quote unquote attractive. It's like what women call chemistry, except with men, it's very often visual. But if the man is a little bit further along, it'll be chemical too, because the scent and appearance of the woman is going to tell you just enormous, just mountains of shit that's super important about how viable you're going to be, not just genetically, but emotionally and all kinds of other things. So she's got to look and smell good. But that can be just based on my standard. You know, actually the ideal thing would be to find a woman that everybody else thinks is ugly and stinks, and you think is gorgeous and smells good. Other than that, honest and honorable, truthful, like that kind of shit is important to me. But I mean, it's something that everybody expects. Women expect the same thing from their men. You don't want to deal with somebody who's, you know, a shitbird. You want to deal with somebody who, you know, means what it says and says what it means and all that stuff. I could probably go off on this topic for quite some time. So before I get myself into some kind of trouble, that's all I got for now. Somebody did just mention though that porridge, great order, and Ollie, good combo. I'm thinking about doing something as like a 3-up discussion. I know, Jared, you guys have done lots of those. You've got tons of experience with them. I don't yet, but I'm thinking that I will do that in the future. So maybe that's a 3-up that could work. Porridge, great order, and me. We'll see. All right. Yes, in future, I definitely should give some more notice about this. But the bottom line is I didn't know I was going to be doing it until 10 minutes before the stream. I just made up my mind. So we will see. I want to thank you all. And what else was that? Oh, apparently Subscribestar is working again. So if you want to support the channel, you can do it there. And there's always GoFundMe, which is operating. Of course, there's my BitChute analogs for both the Semigog and Safer Space channels. There's mine, there's Gab, there's blah, 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 blah. What else was I going to say? Oh, somebody meant, some of you who might be into it, check out my clip with Donovan Warland on fighting and dancing. I noticed that hasn't gotten a lot of views, and it's surprising to me because a lot of the information that we discuss in that is super interesting to me. I guess it just didn't hook people like I thought it would. So there it is. I am out. I'm going to go drink more, and God damn it, as Amanda Anderson has probably guessed, I want a fucking cigarette. So that's it. Thank you all very much for hanging in. As I generally say, I'm Oliver Perrin for Semigog, and I am out.